Hey, Razzie here. I hope you enjoy a reading of the first week of March from 1903. These are newspaper stories that I personally found interesting. Enjoy! Campbell, son of the former superintendent of the New York and Queens County Railroad, sad-faced, humbled, and a mere boy. The magistrate looked at his red cheeks and spouting beard and sternly asked him why. Peter was about to answer when Miss Campbell added to the other complaint that the wrecker of her happiness had also tried to kidnap their 1-year-old Genevieve while she was going through Hallett Street. When it transpired that Miss Campbell was living with her sisters in number 48 Hallett Street and that Peter was living with his parents at number 27 Whaling Street, the magistrate quickly decided that it was a case of too much relatives. He advised the young full pair to kiss and make up and go home and live like true married pair. Keep away from your relatives, he enjoined, and you'll be happy. They left the court, Peter begging his wife to return, apologizing for the terrible name. Miss Campbell was obdurate and said never, never, never. Moonshiner, a tearful woman. Mary Grossman, who has wept herself out of prison several times, caught again. 3 times within the last year has Mary Grossman been arrested by the Internal Revenue Office, charged with moonshining, and 3 times has she actually wept her way out of court. The last time the woman was arrested for operating an illicit still was at number 332 Cherry Street last October. When her case was called, she crept, more than walked, into court. There she opened the floodgates of her emotions, and once again the tears rolled down her furrowed cheeks. As she told of her miserable existence, her poverty, and of her little girls for whom she toiled and dared the majesty of the law, she was discharged. A few months ago she met Tinsel, the chief revenue official, on the street. She snapped her fingers in his face when she told her smugglers and moonshiners, who have never known such sentiment, went about with bowed heads. Men who had never before knew what it was to shed tears were seen to pass a rough coat sleeve over their faces, were heard to murmur a prayer for the soul of Miss Matilda Sullivan, who died yesterday. She was the wife of Warden Sullivan, and, though not so generally known as Tomb's Angel, her benefications to the unfortunates was just as generous and constant. There was no call for an outsider to render kindness, for Miss Sullivan took them all upon herself. No sickness or distress was ever reported in the jail that she did not attend to promptly and voluntarily. Miss Sullivan did not want these little benefactors, which came out of her own pocket, to be known, and today no one at the jail would say much. The long line of prisoners that marched by the coffin alone testified to her goodness. Warden Sullivan himself was so grief-stricken that he could not speak. When a veteran counterfeiter asked that he and the rest might pay some tribute to their good angel, the warden signified assent with a nod, and the cell doors were all thrown open. For nearly an hour the convicts marched by, some crossing themselves as they knelt, others gazing long at the kindly face that had been the bright feature of life in the gloomy prison. Miss Sullivan was a beautiful woman, 39 years old. She gave up her entire time to her children and charity work for the inmates. Her illness began last Christmas, and Warden Sullivan was about to take her out to Lakewood, where the physicians said she would certainly recover. Before he could get leave of absence, blood poisoning developed, and the end was inevitable. Today, hundreds of friends from all parts of New York called to condole with the warden. Funeral services will be held tomorrow evening at St. Mary's Church, Ridge and Grand Streets. The story of her mother's death from starvation. Poverty, you see me sighed. In one poor room, deserted by husband, a frail woman worked for her little ones until death mercifully came. Ida Provost, 35, Ward 6, starvation. Such was the brief legend entered in the books of St. Catherine's Hospital in Williamsburg today. But behind it is a story of human suffering and privation. The narrative of how the other half lives in this golden age of plenty. The story was told by a slip of a girl, pale, worn, and hollow-eyed, whose arms were burdened a little child crying for food and calling for Mama. She sat on one whole chair in a bare little room on the top floor of number 138 Bayard Street, Williamsburg, one of the bleakest tenements in that cheerless neighborhood. The annuals of the poor. We were not always so poor, she began in a dry, hard voice. So, we never had what you might call a great plenty. Papa died a long, long time ago when I was a very little girl. Then we moved around from tenement to tenement until about 5 years ago. Mama married Louis Lurbert. My stepfather came and went and finally disappeared. Then Mother was left alone with the 4 of us. Joe was 13 and did what he could, but it was hard for him to find work. Mama worked, oh, so hard, until about 2 months ago, when she could not raise her hand to anything. She was so weak. Her hair had turned almost white. I looked after the house and the babies. That was all I could do, and we tried to manage to live on a few pennies my brother would scrape up by doing odd jobs. All the food we could buy was bread and bologna. Mama was too weak to eat this, and try as we could not get the money to buy the nice things that she needed. Once or twice a week we were able to buy a little oatmeal, and she could eat that. But when she saw the babies look so hungry, she would only eat a very little. Eviction added to hunger. We did not go to the neighbors, for they have so many children that they have a hard time to get along, too. We pay $3 a month for this room. But we owe a month's rent, and a few days ago, the landlord came and told us that we'd have to get out soon. In that last week, all that Mother had to eat was a few spoonfuls of oatmeal. I wanted to get to a doctor, but was afraid to, as we had no money. But yesterday, when Mama tried to speak and I saw that she was too weak to make a sound, I ran off to the hospital and asked them to come and see her. They sent an ambulance and took her away. They tell me she is dead. Here, the child's voice sank to a whisper. Dead. I wonder if she's not happier and better off now. She was so thin and had so many pains. She said it was rheumatism, but I guess it was something else. Joe has gone to New York to see if we can find Mr. Lurbert and ask him if he will not help us bury Mama. I think he might do that, don't you? I have no fear of the police, says Miss Payne. I have accounted for every moment of my time on the night Mr. Burdick was murdered, and do not expect to be arrested, she adds. Woman named in Buffalo Mystery speaks plainly in her defense. Police have ransacked her house and found nothing. She declares man and woman seen running from Burdick home and entering the cab are now sought. Special to the Evening World. Buffalo, March 5th, Miss Seth T. Payne of number 492 Linwood Avenue, whose photograph was found in the den of Edward L. Burdick after he had been murdered, and who has figured prominently in the case since the police began their investigation, talked quite freely of the matter this afternoon. I have no fear of arrest, she says. I can account for my whereabouts every minute of the night of the murder, and so accounted to the police. I was not near the Burdick home that night. I know nothing about the tragedy, nor how it happened. I was in my own home all that night and can prove by my servants and others that my statements are true. Did the police seem satisfied with your statements? Miss Payne was asked. If they have any doubts about them, they must be satisfied now. They called at the house on Sunday after I told them all I knew on Saturday night and searched it from cellar to garret. They turned everything upside down and inside out. I don't know what they were looking for, and they did not tell me what they expected to find, but I have nothing to conceal, and they found nothing. Does not know murderer. Have you any idea, Miss Payne, of the identity of the murderer? No, I haven't the slightest conjecture. I don't know who could have had any reason for committing such a crime. Was it true, as reported, that you told the police you talked by telephone with Mr. Burdick on the afternoon before his murder? Yes, I telephoned to him in answer to a message from him on the night before, but it had entirely to do with social affairs. Miss Payne spoke confidently throughout, like a woman who was sure of her ground. Although she has been watched closely and has been under a nervous strain, she seemed today to have recovered her spirits and outwardly was wholly calm and self-possessed. The police are running down a new clue this afternoon which brings a man and a woman into the case, but whether they are suspects that have figured in the mystery all along is a matter of surprise, as Police Superintendent Bull and Chief Cusack were awaiting this evening the report of Detective Horning, who is on the trail and will not speak until they hear from him, saw two running away. Information was given to the police and district attorney this afternoon that a Miss Scott, an elderly woman living with her son-in-law and daughter in their home at the corner of Bryant Street and Ashland Avenue, about 1:30 o'clock last Friday morning, saw a man and a woman run down Ashland Avenue and turn into Bryant Street. The fact they were running attracted her attention at the time, and since the publication of the Burdick's murder, she was brought to the belief that they possibly had some connection to the crime. Miss Scott was at the time sitting up to await the return of her son-in-law, Mr. Herbert, and his wife from some social function. Whether the running couple emerged from or entered the mysterious coupe, which it was yesterday learned was standing on Ashland Avenue for about an hour at the time Friday morning, is a matter of conjecture which the detective is following out. It is considered significant that the coupe was there about the time Miss Scott saw the fleeing man and woman, and it is also deemed significant that the time coincides closely with that given by medical experts as the hour of Burdick's death.
I have come upon some very important clues today, and Chief Cusack's men are out working on them. When they return, perhaps I may have something good to give out. I won't promise anything, because their plans may miscarry.
District Attorney Cotsworth made this statement to an Evening Road reporter at noon today.
It is rumored that John Doe warrants were secured and that two suspects will be taken into custody tonight.
It is rumored that John Doe warrants were secured and that two suspects will be taken into custody tonight. Is that rumor true? Asked the reporter.
I can't give you any information on that point.
You won't deny that warrants have been secured?
I can't say one way or the other. When Detective Sullivan and Homeland get back here, I will give something out.
Is it true that Miss Payne is no longer under police surveillance? The district attorney thought for a moment and said,
I do not feel at liberty to answer that question.
Expected an arrest tonight. But you expect an arrest this evening?
We do, but it depends greatly on what Sullivan and Homeland report when they return.
Where have they gone?
Not more than 3 blocks from. I don't care to answer that,
said Mr. Coatsworth, checking himself. He then asked to be excused. It is evident from the remark made by Chief Detective Patrick Cusack that experiments have been made to ascertain whether a noise on the first floor of Burdick's home could be heard on the second floor. Chief Cusack says that it is impossible to hear any noise or disturbance on lower floors beyond the rooms which they were made. Chief Cusack was asked today, how soon will you take someone in custody?
I can't say. My experiences have taught me that arrest may be made at any time.
With the information collected by the detectives, will an arrest be made?
I suppose there will be one.
Sure, it was a woman. Are you still of the opinion that a woman committed the deed?
A woman did it or she played a prominent part in it.
Superintendent of Police Bull admitted that an arrest in a case is prospect, but declined to be specific in his talk. Why such a complete obvious? March is the most dangerous month of the year because the change of seasons is more than a good many systems can stand. Too often it is true that the sick last only till spring, but if the system is fortified, if the impurities are driven from the blood and the nerve tissues fed with wholesome and strength-giving food, medicine, there is no danger in the change of seasons. Father's John medicine is invaluable as a tonic in the spring. It strengthens the system and drives out the poisonous waste and matter builds up in the body. It is this power that has made it so successful in curing colds and all throat and lung troubles. No weakening stimulants, morphine, or other dangerous drugs. Pastor gone in a street fight. It was between fireman and Rev. Mr. Murray of Jersey City was trying to make peace. He is wiser and sober now. Pastor Emil Murray is a quiet little man who seldom wanders from his confines of the parish in Jersey City. He is beloved by his flock, and every fine Sunday a big audience at Second Reformed Church testifies to the clergyman's popularity. To get in a street fight is the last thing his parishioners would have expected of him, but today, willy-nilly, Pastor Murray became mixed up in one from which he emerged a sadder, wiser, sorrow man. Not all his congregation are in on the secret, but the fact that the Pastor Murray has an insatiable love for attending fires. When the alarm sounds, nothing can keep the preacher at his desk. Off with slippers, on with coat, and away he goes. Sometimes he arrives with the engine in time to see the most exciting part. Today, when the alarm sounded from the corner of Summit and Lado Avenue, Pastor Murray was feeling a particularly good fettle, and he arrived in time to see Mike Whalen strapped on the seat of number 12 coming down the stretch. The horses were galloping, and Whalen was swaying. In 3 shakes, Foreman Wood of truck number 3 had placed a ladder against the burning building and was about to ascend when Whalen launched up and made a remark. The two have been enemies for years. While the fire crackled, merrily Whalen and Wood got together in a good that made a Corbett Jeffries bout look like a May Day frolic of children. So much blood flowed that Pastor Murray jumped in to help. "Remember that you are men," pleaded the pastor, and spoke no more, as he fell underneath the struggling pair, a crushed, breathless Adam. Chief Conway got there in time to resuscitate him with brandy and separate the firemen. He immediately suspended Whalen for intoxication and threatened to do the same for Battalion Chief Kern. Pastor Murray was helped home by 2 members of his Sunday school, to whom he announced that he attended his last fire. Despondent man ends life in park. George W. McArty drinks carbolic acid and lies down to die with a rock for his pillow. Policeman finds body. George W. McArty, 24 years old, who lived with his wife and 2-year-old daughter at number 1872 Bathgate Avenue in the Bronx, committed suicide early today in Morningside Park by drinking carbolic acid. As policeman Dorsey of West 125th Street Station was crossing the park, he stumbled across the body of a well-dressed man laying on a rock. He summoned an ambulance from J. Hood Wright Hospital, but the ambulance surgeon said that the young man had been dead some time. A short time after he had been taken to the police station, his sister, Miss Jessie McArdle of Bedford Park, came to the station house and identified the body as that of her brother. She had read the announcement of his suicide in the morning paper. She said that she knew of no reason for him taking his life, as he was happily married and had always appeared cheerful. His father was a policeman for many years, and he was employed in the supply department of the fire department in West 3rd Street. He was also connected with a morning newspaper. The police found several bank book letters and a fire badge in his clothing. Some of McArdle's friends said today that he had been despondent lately and several times threatened to commit suicide. Are husbands a detriment? Are husbands a detriment? Do they debar women from careers? By Harriet Hubbard Eyre. A young girl who is earning a good salary and is, as she frankly says, ambitious to get on and unwilling to give up her business career, asks if I think a husband in her case will be a handicap. Do you think, she says naively, that if I stand as good of a chance to do my best work and get to the top of my profession, married as single? To tell you the truth, my dear girl, I don't think a mere husband would stand in your way long, for it is evident you care more for getting on your business than for being a wife of any man. Such being the case, I should be truly sorry for the man whom you marry. He would have to play second riddle with a vengeance, and from the beginning too. Anything that diverts you or distracts your attention from your work will impede your progress. But what do you want with a husband if you care more for your business future than for a home and a man's love and protection? There are many happy married men and women who are both money earners, but they have as a goal the establishment of a home where finally the wife is to rest and her husband is to have double pleasure of his own domestic happiness and his wife's release from the routine and drudgery of work. When a man and a woman work for a united aim, when, after a long day of honest toil, they meet as lovers to enjoy the confidence and happiness of each other's companionships, the husband is no handicap. His love and sympathy are the reward and compensation to the wife for the many petty tyrannies and annoyances of the daily wage earner's life. But you are quite self-sufficient. You do not in the least need a man to protect you or comfort you. You have not even the time to speak of love as a factor in your proposed marriage. If you are entirely absorbed in your personal outlook, it seems to me that you should give the other side of the question a little thought. What about the man you are discussing as the husband and handicap? A husband has a right to some little consideration, and his happiness or misery are of importance to him, if no one else. What sort of wife can a girl who cold-bloodedly discuss her future husband as a possible nuisance, while she is supposed to be at her most romantic period of her acquaintance with him? The woman who thinks her husband may prove detriment to her would better stay single. Husbands are easier to escape altogether than to suppress once acquired. Of course, there are husbands and husbands. Some of them like to work for their wives, and they are never so happy as when they turn over their week's salary to the small hands that are so often such surprisingly active money spenders. There are others who dearly love to see their wives work. They are, in fact, so unselfish that they are more ambitious to see their wife succeed in life than they are to work themselves. Such a husband would best suit you if you feel you ought to have a husband at all. Seriously, I do not think a married woman with home duties and home ties can be successful in business as a woman who are thoroughly dependent. A businesswoman cannot be good or thorough housekeeper. It is frequently said of the well-known writers or professional women that they are the most excellent housekeepers, but I know, and so many other women who have been both housekeeper and bread earners, that a conscientious businesswoman must concentrate her working day on her work, whatever it may be. If you take 8 or 9 hours out of a housekeeper's day, each day of her life, how can you expect her to compete with the woman who has nothing to divert her thoughts from her home and her family, and who has all the time in her self-imposed task of loving thought provision for her husband and children? A businesswoman is in a hurry in the mornings before she leaves home. She is tired and nerve-frazzled usually when the day's work is done. How can she keep a domestic machinery running smoothly if she is never at the engine? I have said a good many times before, marriage is only justifiable when love sanctifies it. You are not in love. If you were, you would never mention husbands and handicaps in the same sentence. Your own future is what you love best. Therefore, you will be happier and one man will be saved much misery if you remain single. Pretty cashier can't be found. Mammy Lugan, employed at the Rottingburg store, drops out of sight in most mysterious way. Seen walking near home. A mystery that promises to develop into absorbing interest surrounds the disappearance of Mammy Lugan, a pretty assistant cashier in the Rottingburg department store in West 14th Street. From a point within a few doors of her home at number 119 Greenwich Avenue, she is dropped out of sight as completely as though swallowed up by the earth. Her aunt, Miss O'Neill, with whom she lived, is almost distracted, and her sweetheart, Ralph Fanning, a young man of the neighborhood, has not slept since he heard of the disappearance. So busy he has been running down phantom clues. A general police alarm has been sent out for Miss Lugan. An Evening World reporter learned today that about 3 months ago Miss Lugan reached her home in a hysterical condition. She said she had been followed by a Cuban who was stopping at Hotel Murrow in West 14th Street and wanted her to run away with him. To avoid this man, she adopted the custom of going home through 13th Street instead of 14th. Accounts all straight. She had been employed in the position of trust in the Rottingburg store for 4 years. She handled thousands of dollars and never missed a day from her work, and examination of her books has shown that her accounts are straight to a penny. So far as to know, she has no love affair save with one man, and there had been no quarrel to mar their friendship. Miss Lugan went to the head cashier of the store, Mammy Derrickle, on the last Friday afternoon and complained of pains in her head. She asked permission to go home. This was granted. She reported to Sup Davis, who gave her a check entitling her to ingress by the employer's entrance in 13th Street. Leaving the store, she walked west in 13th Street to 7th Avenue. At this corner, she met a girlfriend to whom she said she had been ill and was thinking of taking a rest. She said she was going straight to her home to have her aunt prepare some medicine. Seen near home. Tradesmen who knew her saw her walking down Greenwich Avenue at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. She was last seen by friends a few doors from the house of her aunt. Miss O'Neill went to the store Saturday morning to make inquiries about Miss Lugan and learned that she had left early Friday afternoon. An investigation was set on foot by the firm, and movements of the girl were traced to the vicinity of their home in Greenwich Avenue. Miss Lugan is described as an extremely attractive girl. She's about 5 feet high, has fine black hair, black eyes, and a splendid complexion. When last seen, she wore a long black skirt, black lace shoes with a military heel, size 4B, a black hat with a large black brit on it, a short blue jacket, white woolen gloves, and a mink fur collarette. She carried a small brown leather finger purse to which was affixed a nickel initial letter M. This automation lives. A new wonder attracts attention at Regal Shoe Store's windows. Get on to the waxworks. My, ain't he a stunner? The small boy's enthusiasm was equaled by the wonderment of grown-up pedestrians who stopped in curiosity and crowded before the Regal Shoe Store Company at number 155 Nassau Street, viewing in amazement the exhibition which was going on in the show window. A man, an exact counterpart of a wax automation, stood in the window and, with the jerky and measured movements of an automatic figure, exhibited the qualities of inferior shoes and those of the company he was advertising. His face, made up of a coat of wax, and his never-winking eyes provoked endless discussion.
He can't be alive.
Yes, he is, though, were the conflicting components. The novel advertising scheme, which is the Regal Shoe Store Company, is showing at its 14 different stores, consists of a wonder from St. Louis who cuts up shoes and displays their qualities to the public in a strictly automatic manner. His name is Wizard, and the fact he can keep his face immovable and not wink for 1 hour and 40 minutes puts him in the wizard class. The marvelous living automation will make a circuit of the company's stores and is attracting unusual attention. Kidnapped child at wedding? Miss Sharpstein regretted giving little Pauline to Miss Schwartz and took sensational means to recover her. Grabbed girl and ran away. A thrilling and successful kidnapping created a panic among the guests at a wedding celebration on the Lower East Side last evening. Today, the pretty 7-year-old child, who was the center of a sensation, her real parents, her mother by adoption, and a score of wedding guests were in the children's court. Pauline Sharpstein, a little oriental beauty whose rich and dainty attire consisted strangely with the homely grab of the mother who was fighting for possession of her, seemed bewildered by all the excitement she had created. 11 months ago, she was adopted by Miss Mary Schwartz, a wealthy woman of Old Forge, Pennsylvania. Miss Schwartz had 2 boys, but she wanted a little girl, and her husband, who had business dealings with Miss Sharpstein's brother, Isaac Muskowitz, told him to find him the little girl for adoption. Sharpstein thought he would be doing a good turn by having his little niece adopted into a wealthy family, and he turned her over to Schwartz. The letter had legal papers drawn up and signed, and took the child to his home, resolved to get her back. Miss Sharpstein regretted parting with her little girl, and when she heard yesterday that Miss Schwartz had arrived in the city with little Pauline to attend a wedding ceremony, she and her husband made up their minds to regain possession of their child. Their plan was as daring as it was successful. The wedding celebration of William Buittman and Miss Maggie Friedman, which took place in Congress Hall, number 155 Avenue C, was at its height when the parents arrived on the scene. They were not invited guests, but in the general merrymaking no one took notice of their presence. Miss Sharpstein kept out of Miss Schwartz's way until she saw an opportunity to get possession of her child. The little one was frolicking with a number of other children when the mother swooped down on her, took her in her arms, and dashed for the door. Sharpstein's business was to clear a way for his wife through the wedding guests, and he did it well. He scattered folks right and left, and his wife, with the screaming child in her arms, followed in his wake. Cries of "Fright! Fright!" ran through the hall, walked behind into the streets after the kidnappers, in a twinkling Avenue C filled with a mob. Caught by crowd and street. The cry of kidnappers resounded through the street, and word was quickly carried to the Union Market police station. The reserves were turned out, and none too soon, for wedding guests had fallen upon Sharpstein and his wife, and would have handled them roughly but for the arrival of police. The parents and the child were taken to the station, with an excited mob in their wake. Isaac Mouskowitz attended the court that he had given the child to Schwartz family for adoption. He considered the parents had given up their legal right to it since his arrival in America 3 years ago. Sharpstein had shunted the child off on his relatives to avoid the expense of keeping it. The little one, he said, had been passed around among the mothers, brothers, and sister-in-law, never being kept at home. He knew Miss Schwartz would give Pauline a good home, so he turned her over and signed the adoption papers. He admitted telling Miss Schwartz that the child's mother was dead. Sharpstein testified that he had let his relatives keep the child, as he was too poor to provide for it, His wife contradicted him, saying he received $40 a month with rent and coal-free for activities as a janitor in Clinton Street Synagogue. Little Pauline showed no affection in court for her parents, but cried piously to go to Miss Schwartz, whom she called Mama. Judge Almeida took the matter under advisement. The potato race problem. Jimmy, Jackie, and Jason run a potato race. Each one had 25 potatoes to pick up, says the Philadelphia North American. The potatoes were lying at intervals of 5 feet in 3 parallel rows. How many potatoes were there in all? How many feet from the potato number 1 to potato number 25 in each row? If every potato in each row had to be carried clear back to the head of that row and laid down with the first potato, how many feet did each boy have to run before they got through? If Jimmy could run as 325 feet in 1 minute, how long did he take? Tuesday, March 1903. Confesses that she sent a message to E.L. Burdick. Miss Gertrude Bernard Payne tells the Buffalo police that she had talked with him through the telephone on the afternoon preceding the night he was killed in the smoking den in his mansion. Woman visitor on night of the tragedy has mysteriously disappeared. Buffalo society is badly demoralized by fear of immoral revelations. Blackthorn may have been weapon of death. Special to the Evening World. Buffalo, March 3rd, just before Edwin L. Burdick left his office last Thursday afternoon to spend what has proved to be his last evening on Earth, he was called up on the telephone by a woman. The police, in their search for clues that might lead to the apprehension of the murderer of Burdick, have been endeavoring for the last 24 hours to find out who was the woman. Miss Gertrude Bernard Payne was called upon by the police today at her home, number 497 Elmwood Avenue, where she made the following statement. I called Mr. Burdick that afternoon. It was in response to a telephone message from him the night before, and relating exclusively to social affairs. It had no relation to any appointment with him at any time. The police and district attorney questioned Miss Payne very closely, but she never varied her hair's breadth from this story. Blackthorn may be a clue. Chief of Detectives Cusack and Assistant District Attorney Abbott went to the Burdick home today, supposedly for the purpose of again questioning the 2 servants' girls, who, the police believe, have not told all they know regarding Burdick's death. While Attorney Abbott was talking to Miss Burdick, Chief Cusack began a new search for whatever might turn up in the way of a clue. While handling things in Burdick's smoking den, where the murder occurred, he found a blackthorn stick broken in the middle and several strings of hair close to the break. When the blackthorn was discovered in the corner, there was excitement in the Burdick home. Chief Cusack immediately telephoned the police headquarters, and after taking charge of the den, he ordered all people about the house to depart. Probably the weapon of death. With the finding of Blackthorn, the police have undoubtedly come upon the weapon which Burdick was killed. When questioned regarding the finding of the stick, Chief Cusack said, Yes, I accidentally came upon a blackthorn in one of the corners of the den, and while it was cracked in the middle, I can't say it is a much important clue. Were there strands of hair near the break in the stick? Was asked. Chief Cusack refused to say anything farther regarding the finding of the stick, and while Attorney Abbott remained in the Burdick home, Chief Cusack hurried to the police headquarters with the blackthorn wrapped in a newspaper. Not a woman, he thinks. Suppose a woman had an apartment with Burdick in his house in the den on the Thursday night, and it is my firm belief that she did. Suppose, further, that a husband, who, growing suspicious of his wife, had followed the woman to the house and entered closely following the woman. The man was indignant. The man was indignant, insanely mad, and committed this crime. This opinion given out today by District Attorney Coatsworth is is an indistinction that the police and the law officers have abandoned the theory that a woman killed Edwin L. Burdick. The police say at least a dozen divorce suits in preparation will be hushed for present because the police say that at least a dozen divorce suits in preparation will be hushed for the present because the parties most interested moved in the same set of Burdick and his wife. It is said that the set was a common thing for young husbands to make open love with each other's wife after a short married life. The details, of course, are not revealed by the police, but are simply stated in a general way. An extraordinary condition of high social immorality has been laid bare thus far for the tragedy, and many families of note dread further delving into the mystery. Dr. Payne says it was a man. Dr. Payne, who knows everybody in Buffalo society, said, I don't believe that Eddie Burdick was killed by a woman. It was a man who murderously angry at Burdick. For what reason the crime was committed, I cannot think. The murderer knew the house. I don't believe the murderer had any connection with the Elmwood Dancing Club or the Red Jacket Club. I never heard Eddie Burdick remark anything about his enemies. A review of principal facts in the tragedy revealed up to date shows that Burdick had made an appointment with a woman to meet him on the night of the murder. One of the servants saw Mr. Burdick scantily clad go into the smoking room around 11 o'clock that night with a woman. A cabman stated that he dropped a man in the neighborhood of Burdick's home about 11 o'clock on the night of the murder. The golf stick, which was first supposed to have been the instrument of which the murder was committed, is said now not to have been such a weapon as would have caused the wounds on Mr. Burdick's head. Furthermore, the stains upon it have been found to be rust. Mr. Burdick's will has been found, and it is said outs Miss Burdick entirely, all of his real and personal property going to 3 children. Police helpless in Burdick case, says Chief Bull. Tells the Evening World over long-distance telephone that the tracks of the murderer are being carefully covered. Thus far, there have been a half a dozen theories as to the identity of the person who murdered Edward L. Burdick in the den of his mansion in Buffalo on Thursday night. Circumstances first gave rise to the belief that it was a woman. Then, the theory was advanced that it was a jealous man who followed his wife to Burdick's home. Another idea is that it may have been committed out of revenge for an old insult. The Evening World called up Superintendent of Police Bull of Buffalo on the long-distance telephone this afternoon, and the following conversation resulted. The Evening World. What is the latest news in Burdick murder mystery?
Superintendent Bull. There are no new developments. The case stands this hours just as it stood yesterday.
Do you anticipate the arrest will be made today?
I do not. Unless something unforeseen occurs, we are about as far away from an arrest now as we were when we took up the investigation.
A newspaper here reports that the ground glass was found in the stomach of the dead man, indicating that his murderer attempted to poison him.
Nothing in it. The chemical analysis of the stomach has not been completed, and the report of the chemist will not be ready for some time.
Do you agree with the theory that a jealous husband traced his wife to Burdick's house in the night, entered by the rear window, found her in the den with him, and then killed him?
I wouldn't like to say what my theory are. There are all sorts of theories. I do not recall a crime in my experience as a policeman that was so well covered up. This is different from an ordinary murder. There are so many complications in the relations of the people mixed up with the Burdicks that clues lead in every direction, and thus far the most of them have run off into air.
tracks carefully covered up.
The person who committed this murder may have done it in a sudden spasm of rage, but after the murder was committed, there were steps taken to cover up the tracks of the murderer. Generally, in cases of this kind, we have means of getting pretty close to somebody against whom suspicion may be directed with a reason. But in the Burdick's mystery, we have been up against a series of puzzling things.
Is it true that a missing golf stick has been found?
I've been getting reports from Chief Detective Cusack on all stages of the case and have heard nothing about it.
How about the cocktail bottle top that was found in the rear of Burdick's house?
I haven't heard just what significance is attached to the discovery, so as far as I know, it is not regarded as much importance.
Has any trace been found of the woman who walked to the middle of the street to avoid policemen near Burdick's home on that night of the tragedy?
Not a trace. Although the policemen have looked over a lot of women, we have tried to find her, but when she walked out of his sight, she appears to have walked off the face of this earth. If she had nothing to do with the crime and can explain her presence in the neighborhood, we think it strange that she does not come out and reveal herself in confidence, thus clearing up one of the many puzzling features of the case.
Is Miss Burdick under surveillance?
Not exactly, but of course if she left Buffalo, we would know where she went.
Called homely, kills herself. Miss Reinhardt, affronted by her husband before her children, sends them out and turns on gas. His love had grown cold. Sent for a doctor when he discovered the tragedy, but today he has gone to collect the life insurance. You are getting homely. You are getting homelier every day. Frederick Reinhardt said this at the supper table to his wife. About them were gathered their 4 children, Lizzie, the eldest, age 18, and Tilly, Agnes, and Frida. It was not the first time the husband had told his wife that the beauty which had charmed him 17 years ago was a thing of the past. But to the inn Hamburg, where they were married, patient, tired women sitting opposite to him, the word struck deeper than they ever had before. She had not been well recently. There were times when an iron hand seemed to clutch at her breast, and she could not breathe. The doctor told her heart was affected. After supper, Reinhardt went out. He had a habit of going out just after supper. Lizzie, the little mother of the family, went out also. Then Miss Reinhardt called the remaining children to her and sent them out to the store to get some milk. It was a store that was unnecessarily far away. Calmly proceeded to die. Quite alone in the little flat at number 52 Hudson Street, Hoboken, she sat for a while at the supper table, her face buried in her hands, but she was not crying. When she rose, she walked slowly into the middle room, the dark, windowless bedroom where she had spent many sleepless nights, and closing both doors that communicated with the dining and the room where the children slept, turned on the gas and lay down. One of the doors she locked. There were no key to the other, so she pushed a huge packing basket against it and fastened it to the doorknob with a long black tie of her husband's, which she found near at hand. Then, tying the basket to the waiststand, she lay down. 20 minutes later, Reinhardt, coming up the stairs, met his eldest daughter, Lizzie, in the hall. She had just come in also. This is Lizzie's account of how she found her mother. I was coming up the stairs when I met my papa in the hall. I went first, and papa just behind me in the hall. When I opened the door, there was a smell of gas. I started to go in, but papa said, "Don't go in there. Run for a doctor." Then he went in and threw open the windows and burst open the door into my mama's room, the door that was tied with the necktie. He found my mama lying on the bed. When I got back with the doctor, he said my mama was still alive, but after a while, said she was dead. Not the first time.
It was not the first time Papa had told Mama she was getting homely. I had heard him say it so often, but my Mama was a very fine-looking woman. She was not feeling well, and I suppose it worried her. I work in a pocketbook factory, but yesterday she looked so badly that I told her I would stay home and help her. But she said I must go to work, Then she sat and cried for a long time. She told me Papa made her feel very unhappy. She said she loved him so much, but he had never loved her. Papa cried all last night. Is he at work now? The reporter asked. Oh, no, Papa works over in New York with an elevator company, but now he has gone to collect Mama's life insurance. Papa says Mama was awful mean to die and leave us 4 little children, but my Mama had lots of troubles. My 2 little sisters are going to live with an aunt in Camden. Tilly is going with another aunt, and I am going to work out. I am sorry my Mama is dead. She was an awful good woman. Everyone said she was the best woman in the house.
Old woman, U.S. prisoner. Miss Ayers of Hoboken is accused of sending offensive letters. Miss Annie J. Ayers, 60 years old, of number 114th Street, Hoboken, was arrested today on a warrant issued by United States Commissioner Ruff on a charge of sending offensive letters to the mails. The complaint was made through Anthony Comstock by 2 men of the name of Jackson and Clinton of number 32 Disboris Street, this city. She was held on $1,000 bail. Body of drowned man comes up after 3 months. A deckhand on Merit Champion Lighter Champion at anchor between Piers 13 and 14 East River saw a body bob up alongside today. He gave up the alarm. The body was hauled aboard and was found to be that of George Fletcher, formerly cook on the Champion, who had fallen overboard in that very ship last December 16th. That the body of the cook should have come to the surface after nearly 3 months, exactly where the drowning took place and while his former shipmates were in the ship, is considered remarkable by the rivermen. Felthart slipped off while crossing from pier to the boat, and it is supposed that his body became fast in the piles and was held there until today. Nothing is known of the man's family. The body was taken to the morgue and will be buried by Merit Champion Company. Pencil in his eye. Fatal accident to a New Rochelle boy while playing. Chester B. Bloom, the 3-year-old son of William Bloom of New Rochelle, ran a pencil into his eye while playing on the floor. 3 doctors, including a specialist, tried to save the boy's life, but Chester died. Prison mourns for an angel. Inmates of Ludlow Street Jail played tribute to the memory of their loyal friend, Warden Sullivan's wife, in tears at her coffin. There was a great sorrow today for the prisoners at Ludlow Street Jail. Hardened criminals, counterfeiters, forgers, smugglers, and moonshiners, who have never known such sentiment, went about with bowed heads. Men who had never before knew what it was to shed tears were seen to pass a rough coat sleeve over their faces, were heard to murmur a prayer for the soul of Miss Matilda Sullivan, who died yesterday. She was the wife of Warden Sullivan, and, though not so generally known as Tomb's angel, her benefications to the unfortunates was just as generous and constant. There was no call for an outsider to render kindness, for Miss Sullivan took them all upon herself. No sickness or distress was ever reported in the jail that she did not attend to promptly and voluntarily. Miss Sullivan did not want these little benefactors, which came out of her own pocket, to be known, and today no one at the jail would say much. The long line of prisoners that marched by the coffin alone testified to her goodness. Warden Sullivan himself was so grief-stricken that he could not speak. When a veteran counterfeiter asked that he and the rest might pay some tribute to their good angel, the warden signified assent with a nod, and the cell doors were all thrown open. For nearly an hour the convicts marched by, some crossing themselves as they knelt, others gazing long at the kindly face that had been the bright feature of life in the gloomy prison. Miss Sullivan was a beautiful woman, 39 years old. She gave up her entire time to her children and charity work for the inmates. Her illness began last Christmas, and Warden Sullivan was about to take her out to Lakewood, where the physicians said she would certainly recover. Before he could get leave of absence, blood poisoning developed, and the end was inevitable. Today, hundreds of friends from all parts of New York called to condole with the warden. Funeral services will be held tomorrow evening at St. Mary's Church, Ridge and Grand Streets. Missing girl held captive? Foster mother and sweetheart of Mammy Glugan, who has disappeared, think a kidnapper got her. All trace of her lost. No trace has been found of Mammy Glugan, a pretty cashier of Rossburg 14th Street department store, who disappeared last Friday afternoon. Her foster mother, Miss P.J. O'Neill, of number 121 Greenwich Avenue, is firmly of belief that the girl has been kidnapped by a Cuban of whose intentions she complained of over 3 months ago. Others think that she drowned herself in the lake in Central Park, although this belief is fired upon nebulous circumstances. It is known that the girl, on the day before her disappearance, asked where the lake in Central Park was. She had been despondent for some time because she had no disposition for housework, and Ralph Fanning, her sweetheart, was anxious to wed her. Young Fanning has scarcely slept since he heard of the disappearance of Miss Glugan. He shares the belief that Miss O'Neill that the girl was detained somewhere against her will. Upon leaving the store Friday afternoon, after being excused because of the pain in her head, the girl started for home across 13th Street. At 7th Avenue, she met a friend to whom she said she was going home for some medicine. She was seen in Greenwich Avenue at 5 o'clock in the evening, a few doors away from her own home. Young Fanning is of the opinion that if she desired to go to Central Park, she would have gone direct from the store by way of 6th Avenue or Broadway. There's a report to the effect that the girl was seen at 6th Avenue, 13th Street last Friday evening, but this report is not confirmed. The person who is said to see her represented that she walked like one in a trance, and that this resurrected a story that the girl was under influence of a hypnotist. This hypnotist is said to be a floor walker. In the department store near Rothenberg's, young Fanning and the girl quarreled about the attentions this man paid to her last summer, when, it is said, she confessed that she could not escape from his influence. Looking for that floor walker. Young Fanning made the following statement about so-called hypnotic floor walker this afternoon.
I know who this man is, and from what I can learn, he, too, has disappeared. He worked in the store on 6th Avenue, but not Rothenberg's. When I went there today, he told me he had left about a week ago. I hunted all through dry goods district for him, but nobody seems to know whether he has gone. If I get hold of him and find he had anything to do with taking Mammy away, there will be one floor walker less.
Fanning undoubtedly means what he says. He is half insane from the loss of sleep and anxiety. Young Fanning went to his office for the first time since the disappearance of his sweetheart. He found a letter there which had been awaiting him since Friday from Miss Glugan. In this letter, she asked him to meet her at 13th Street and 7th Avenue on Friday night, as she had something to tell him she could not put in writing. Wednesday, March 1903. Police ransack Miss Payne's home for murder clue. Buffalo sleuths, against her protests, seek for incriminating evidence to connect her with the tragedy that resulted in the mysterious death of E.L. Burdick. Belief expressed by the detectives that an arrest is due within a very few hours, and that the clue that was needed to put them on the right track has been found. Special to the Evening World from a staff correspondent. Buffalo, March 4th. The police this afternoon searched from cellar to garret the home of Miss Seth T. Payne at 42 Elmswood Avenue. The work was done under the instructions of District Attorney Coatsworth and Chief of Detectives Cusack. Miss Payne was prostrated when the officers entered her home, but though her husband At first objected to the search being carried on, he was forced to recognize the rights of the police, and he submitted to the inevitable. Miss Payne is the handsome wife of Dr. Payne, and the woman whose photograph was found in the den of Edwin L. Burdick. She admitted to the police yesterday that she had called Mr. Burdick on the telephone the day of the tragedy. The police apparently searched for the letters today. When asked whether or not there had been any results, Chief Cusack said,
"It is not the time yet for any disclosures. We will speak in good time, and not until we are safe."
Pennell heavily insured. The foregoing was interesting to the friends of all parties concerned, but even as interesting was the fact divulged today for the first time that Arthur R. Pennell, lawyer and clubman whose name has been linked with that of Miss Alec Burdick since the murder, has had his life insured for $150,000. Fear of Mr. Burdick, it is said, prompted Pennell to take this action. It is known that there were harsh words between Burdick and Pennell, and Burdick had lately taken to carrying a revolver. The questions now asked by police in connection with the case: did Pennell fear for his life? Pennell, when interviewed on this question today, said,
"I don't care to talk too much about this Chernin case. Perhaps I've already talked too much. The fact that I've had my life so heavily insured is nothing to anyone but me and my family."
Superintendent of Police Bull, who made the first definite announcement last night that one woman whose identity he will not disclose, but who has been under grave suspicion for 5 days, murdered Edwin L. Burdick, added a little to his statement today. He said that in the case of this woman, there was a double motive for putting Burdick out of the way. The woman feared the exposure which the divorce proceedings would entail upon her. She had another and a powerful reason for wishing Burdick dead. What this reason was can only be summarized. It may have been that one more dear to her than her own life, or that her own honor was involved in the scandal, which was on the point of breaking. It may have been that the price of her own happiness with her lover or husband made a contingent on her doing the awful deed. Heretofore, the officers have declared stoutly that the person who did the murder was one who would suffer by disclosures to be made on the trial of divorce action brought by the Burdick against his wife. Now on the right track. Today, Superintendent Bull declared that he was not satisfied that the sole object of murderess was to shut off all further action in divorce proceedings. The superintendent said there was just one line of information which the police required before they feel justified in making an arrest. This particular line of information had invaded the police up to yesterday. Then they got on track of it. Detectives are working on it now. When they secure what Superintendent Bull believes, they will bring in within a few hours the woman's suspect. Chief of Detectives Cusack spent almost the entire morning in conference with District Attorney Coatsworth. When he emerged at noon, he asked, "Will there be an arrest today?"
"There may be,"
he said.
"I am not sure. Of course, it may come today, and it may be delayed, but we are on the right track now. As to the identity of the woman we suspect, we have never departed from the right track. But what I mean is that we are now very close to the final links in the chain of evidence, which will warrant us in making an arrest."
Miss Burdick gets insurance. Miss Burdick, it is learned today. Miss Burdick, it was learned today, will benefit by several policies of life insurance which her husband held. Before the separation, she signed away her dower rights in all his real estate in consideration of the provision made for her support, whatever might be the outcome of the divorce proceedings. She is not mentioned in his will, but appears that Miss Burdick, if he had any intention of cutting her off from any share of the life insurance money, neglected to change the name of the beneficiary in the policies. It is probable that he had no idea that he would not live for many more years, and simply put it off what was a matter involving considerable routine work on a part of the executors of the estate, notwithstanding the waiver which she signed when the separation was done last September. Miss Burdick, therefore, is left slightly prosperous condition. She will share in the benefits and profits of her husband's various business endeavors, which will be continued as before death, and she will have from 25,000 to 40,000 of life insurance money at once ready in cash. Drunken man broke boy's leg. Thought 8-year-old was making fun of him and slapped and kicked little chap savagely. Called in vain for help. 8-year-old Willie Harrington of number 581 Grove Street, Jersey City, while playing in front of his home last night, was brutally attacked by Daniel Kelly, 51 years old, of number 329 129th Street, and kicked until the little fellow's right leg was broken below the knee. Young Harrington was mocking some of his playmates when Kelly came along. Kelly, who was intoxicated, thought the boy was making fun of him. He grabbed him by the arm and slapped him across the face. The little fellow screamed with pain. He tried to get away, but Kelly had a tight hold on him.
"Make fun of me, will ya, kid?"
said Kelly.
"I'll show you something."
"Oh, Mama, Mama," yelled the child. "He will kill me."
"Shut up,"
said Kelly. Again, the child called for help, and uttering another oath, Kelly pushed the child away and made a vicious kick at him, landing on the right leg just below the knee. Screaming louder than before, the child fell on the sidewalk. His playmates carried him into the house to his mother. He cried with so much pain that Dr. Hoffman was summoned. He said the leg was broken and promptly said it. Kelly, who was arrested by a policeman Foley, who caught him trying to escape from a howling mob of children. He was charged with atrocious assault and battery. Arranged before Judge Hosen in First Criminal Court today, Kelly was held for a grand jury. The maximum penalty for atrocious assault is 12 years imprisonment at hard labor. 5 years old, sick of Brooklyn. Tiny Family Gould and her doll, Josephine, started for Philadelphia with a capital of 2 cents. Got to Cortlandt Ferry. But Jolly the ticket man and returning were taken by a big policeman and sent home later. Even 5-year-old Fanny Gould has rebelled at Brooklyn and wants to go back to her lively Philadelphia home. Yes, lively. Fanny herself used that very word. Fanny would have been satisfied to remain in New York, but Brooklyn never. She noticed the lull the first day she got there, and the awful silence got on her nerve more the longer she remained. The little Miss father and mother lived in Philadelphia, and there is where she spent all of her short life until a few weeks ago she was sent to visit Miss J.A. Hughes at number 77 Court Street, Brooklyn. She isn't very large, but she imagined that she could find her way back to Philadelphia. With the capital of 2 cents, yesterday Miss Hughes left Fanny alone in the house. The monotony of sorting Christian Science papers was terrible. Fanny thought it all over and decided that never would be there a better chance to carry out her purpose. Josephine Gould, that's Fanny's dolly, was sitting primly over in the corner, and she was let into the secret. Josephine and Fanny discussed the matter quite seriously, and Josephine made no objection to undertaking the journey. Dolly's clothes were all packed up, and with 2 cents and any amount of assurance, the two started out. The sun was bright and clear, and Josephine seemed to enjoy the cutting no less than did Fanny. They walked across the promenade of the bridge, and Fanny explained to Josephine that the ships were going out to sea and might never come back, and that great creatures of green eyes and thousands of arms might jump out of the water and pull them down into the bottom of the ocean. Josephine was frightened and wanted to go back, but she finally yielded. On they went, past the big poster building and across City Hall Park, looking down into the subway.
Exactivation.
looking into the subway's activation on the way. There were many things of interest to be seen before Josephine and Fanny presented themselves at the Cortlandt Street ferry. They still had 2 cents. The ticket man was willing to let Josephine ride for nothing, but even a diminutive miss like Fanny would have to pay, he said. Couldn't fool the ticket man. Here was the first obstacle, and argue as she would, Fanny could not persuade the ticket man that she was entitled to a pass. She turned away sadly and wandered up back the street. Policeman Murphy of the Church Street station found her discussing the affair with Josephine and took them to the station house. Matron Green heard their experience and of the dull days in Brooklyn. Miss Hughes was sent for and came to take wanderers home. Fanny sprinkled a few tears on the station house floor, but brightened up when Miss Hughes told her she could go home very soon. The young lady's father is an inventor and a dealer in electrical goods in Philadelphia. Miss Hughes recently visited there and begged to be allowed to bring her child back with her. I'm going back to Philadelphia soon, said Fanny this morning, and Josephine is just as glad as I am. McKeep girl she took at wedding. Magistrate Olmsted will turn over little Pauline Schwarzchen over to her real mother. Although he has not handed down his formal decision, Magistrate Olmsted, sitting in the children's court, has decided that he will allow Mr. and Mrs. Schwarzstein, who created a panic at an East Side wedding a few days ago, by seizing their 7-year-old daughter, Pauline, from Miss Mary Schwartz, may reign the possession of their little girl. Miss Schwartz is a wealthy woman and lives in a fine house in Old Bridge, Pennsylvania, and the Schwarzsteins are very poor. Miss Schwartz adopted this child. Magistrate has learned that the Schwarzsteins are honest people and able to support their child in comfort, if not in luxury. Agents of Gary's Society were investigated the case, and Magistrate Olmsted reached his decision on the report. Mr. Schwarzstein is the janitor at a Clinton Street synagogue. Tried suicide in 3 ways. An unidentified man in Hoboken took poison, slashed himself, and jumped into water, all within the hour. He assaulted his rescuer. Gave the Civil War veteran who saved him from drowning a savage blow before cutting his own throat, now dying in hospital. Hoboken harrowed the soul of one of its identified citizens to such an extent that he tried to kill himself today in 3 different ways within the hour. The first was by swallowing morphine, the second by drowning, and the third with a knife. John Curva, a Civil War veteran, minus 1 arm, saw a man wallowing in 4 inches of water in the Hoboken Meadows in Adams Street, and wading out effected a gallant rescue. The would-be suicide turned on the veteran and gave him an uppercut. While the hero was recovering, the other whipped out a knife and gushed his throat. When taken to St. Mary's Hospital, he was recognized as the man on 4 previous occasions had taken morphine in front of school number 4. The man is 5 feet 4 inches tall, well-dressed, and partly bald. The only clue to his identity was the initial H on his gold cuff buttons. The surgeon said he would probably die. Thursday, March 1903. Called his wife's names. So shocking they were, says Miss Campbell, that she really couldn't bring herself to repeat them to magistrate. Judge, the names my husband called me were something terrible, something awful. Oh, oh, oh. Miss Adeline Campbell, 18 years old, tall, dark, and winsome, fairly shivered before Magistrate Smith in the Long Island Police Court. Everyone shivered. The clock stopped ticking. 4 court officers stopped breathing. The suspense was sickening. What? Inquired the magistrate in a hoarse whisper. What did he call you? For goodness sake, exclaimed the young woman in a tearful way. I'd rather die than tell you. Was it whispered the magistrate, looping the loop over the desk. Oh, worse than that, breathed Miss Campbell innerly. It's worse than anybody think. No one would imagine it, sobbed Miss Campbell. Well then, you need not repeat it. Where is the shameless husband? Up stepped Peter B. Campbell, son of the former superintendent of the New York and Queens County Railroad, sad-faced, humbled, and a mere boy. The magistrate looked at his red cheeks and spouting beard and sternly asked him why. Peter was about to answer when Miss Campbell added to the other complaint that the wrecker of her happiness had also tried to kidnap their 1-year-old Genevieve while she was going through Hallett Street. When it transpired that Miss Campbell was living with her sisters in number 48 Hallett Street and that Peter was living with his parents at number 27 Whaling Street, the magistrate quickly decided that it was a case of too much relatives. He advised the young full pair to kiss and make up and go home and live like true married pair. Keep away from your relatives, he enjoined. You'll be happy. They left the court, Peter begging his wife to return, apologizing for the terrible thing. Miss Campbell was obdurate and said never, never, never. Moonshiner, a tearful woman. Mary Grossman, who has wept herself out of prison several times, caught again. 3 times within the last year has Mary Grossman been arrested by the Internal Revenue Office, charged with moonshining, and 3 times has she actually wept her way out of court. The last time the woman was arrested for operating an illicit still was at number 332 Cherry Street last October. When her case was called, she crept, more than walked, into court. There she opened the floodgates of her emotions, and once again the tears rolled down her furrowed cheeks. As she told of her miserable existence, her poverty, and of her little girls for whom she toiled and dared the majesty of the law, she was discharged. A few months ago, she met Tinsel, the chief revenue official, on the street. She snapped her fingers in his face when she told her they had heard she was making moonshine again. You will have to catch me, she retorted, and you'll never do it again. Before, I was a fool. Now I am wise. If you can catch me again, do it. Chief Agent Tinsel and several of his deputies swooped down on the basement at number 74 Oliver Street and caught the woman red-handed, they say, as she operated a 100-gallon copper twin still. By her was a 5-gallon cask of spirits just finished and still warm. It would make 10 gallons of whiskey. A lot of sugar and yeast mash was also seized. The officials hoped to catch a man who was working with her, but he had slipped out. The woman was arraigned before Commissioner Shields and committed to Leadville Street Jail in the fall. $100,000 bail. $1,000 bail. Court introduced her pup. I'm going to give $125 for millions of them, said magistrate. A small Blenheim Spaniel was carried into Jefferson Market Court today by its own Miss Lillian C. Marin of number 55 Irving Place. She is a well-known amateur dancer and has a fine kennel of long-haired dogs. The spaniel she carried was an exhibit. Miss Marin charged John Schleck of number 161 West 70th Street with the theft of the pup. How much did you say the dog was worth? The magistrate asked the magistrate. It is valued at $125, answered the young woman. Well, I want to give $105 for 1,000,000 of them, commented the court. Children are all right to have in the house, but I draw the line at dogs. After hearing the testimony, however, Magistrate Crane held Schenck in $500 bail for trial. Miss Martin listened to the magistrate's condemnation of her highly bred pet and was so moved that she wept. And this in a land of plenty. Amid the pratings about millions and millionaires, listen to this child's story of her mother's death from starvation. Poverty has seen me sighed. In one poor room, deserted by husband, a frail woman worked for her little ones until death mercifully came. Ida Provost, 35, Ward 6, starvation. Such was the brief legend entered in the books of St. Catherine's Hospital in Williamsburg today. But behind it is a story of human suffering and privation. The narrative of how the other half lives in this golden age of plenty. The story was told by a slip of a girl, pale, worn, and hollow-eyed, whose arms were burdened a little child crying for food and calling for Mama. She sat on one whole chair in a bare little room on the top floor of number 138 Bayard Street, Williamsburg, one of the bleakest tenements in that cheerless neighborhood. The annuals of the poor. We were not always so poor, she began in a dry, hard voice. So, we never had what you might call a great plenty. Papa died a long, long time ago, when I was a very little girl. Then we moved around from tenement to tenement until about 5 years ago. Mama married Louis Lurbert. My stepfather came and went and finally disappeared. Then Mother was left alone with the 4 of us. Joe was 13 and did what he could, but it was hard for him to find work. Mama worked, oh, so hard, until about 2 months ago, when she could not raise her hand to anything. She was so weak. Her hair had turned almost white. I looked after the house and the babies. That was all I could do, and we tried to manage to live on a few pennies my brother would scrape up by doing odd jobs. All the food we could buy was bread and bologna. Mama was too weak to eat this, and try as we could not get the money to buy the nice things that she needed. Once or twice a week we were able to buy a little oatmeal, and she could eat that. But when she saw the babies look so hungry, she would only eat a very little. Eviction added to hunger. We did not go to the neighbors, for they have so many children that they have a hard time to get along, too. We pay $3 a month for this room. But we owe a month's rent, and a few days ago, the landlord came and told us that we'd have to get out soon. In that last week, all that Mother had to eat was a few spoonfuls of oatmeal. I wanted to get to a doctor, but was afraid to, as we had no money. But yesterday, when Mama tried to speak and I saw that she was too weak to make a sound, I ran off to the hospital and asked them to come and see her. They sent an ambulance and took her away. They tell me she is dead. Here, the child's voice sank to a whisper. Dead. I wonder if she's not happier and better off now. She was so thin and had so many pains. She said it was rheumatism, but I guess it was something else. Joe has gone to New York to see if we can find Mr. Lurbert and ask him if he will not help us bury Mama. I think he might do that, don't you? I have no fear of the police, says Miss Payne. I have accounted for every moment of my time on the night Mr. Burdick was murdered, and do not expect to be arrested, she adds. Woman named in Buffalo Mystery speaks plainly in her defense. Police have ransacked her house and found nothing. She declares man and woman seen running from Burdick home and entering the cab are now sought. Special to the Evening World. Buffalo, March 5th. Miss Steph T. Payne of number 492 Linwood Avenue, whose photograph was found in the den of Edward L. Burdick after he had been murdered, and who has figured prominently in the case since the police began their investigation, talked quite freely of the matter this afternoon. I have no fear of arrest, she says. I can account for my whereabouts every minute of the night of the murder, and so accounted to the police. I was not near the Burdick home that night. I know nothing about the tragedy, nor how it happened. I was in my own home all that night and can prove by my servants and others that my statements are true. Did the police seem satisfied with your statements? Miss Payne was asked. If they have any doubts about them, they must be satisfied now. They called at the house on Sunday after I told them all I knew on Saturday night and searched it from cellar to garret. They turned everything upside down and inside out. I don't know what they were looking for, and they did not tell me what they expected to find, but I have nothing to conceal, and they found nothing. Does not know murderer. Have you any idea, Miss Payne, of the identity of the murderer? No, I haven't the slightest conjecture. I don't know who could have had any reason for committing such a crime. Was it true, as reported, that you told the police you talked by telephone with Mr. Burdick on the afternoon before his murder? Yes, I telephoned to him in answer to a message from him on the night before, but it had entirely to do with social affairs. Miss Payne spoke confidently throughout, like a woman who was sure of her ground. Although she has been watched closely and has been under a nervous strain, she seemed today to have recovered her spirits and outwardly was wholly calm and self-possessed. The police are running down a new clue this afternoon which brings a man and a woman into the case, but whether they are suspects that have figured in the mystery all along is a matter of surprise, as Police Superintendent Bull and Chief Cusack were awaiting this evening the report of Detective Horning, who is on the trail and will not speak until they hear from him. Saw two running away. Information was given to the police and district attorney this afternoon that a Miss Scott, an elderly woman living with her son-in-law and daughter in their home at the corner of Bryant Street and Ashland Avenue, about 1:30 o'clock last Friday morning, saw a man and a woman run down Ashland Avenue and turn into Bryant Street. The fact they were running attracted her attention at the time, and since the publication of the Burdick's murder, she was brought to the belief that they possibly had some connection to the crime. Miss Scott was at the time sitting up to await the return of her son-in-law, Mr. Herbert, and his wife from some social function. Whether the running couple emerged from or entered the mysterious coupe, which it was yesterday learned was standing on Ashland Avenue for about an hour at the time Friday morning, is a matter of conjecture which the detective is following out. It is considered significant that the coupe was there about the time Miss Scott saw the fleeing man and woman, and it is also deemed significant that the time coincides closely with that given by medical experts as the hour of Burdick's death.
I have come upon some very important clues today, and Chief Cusack's men are out working on them. When they return, perhaps I may have something good to give out. I won't promise anything, because their plans may miscarry.
District Attorney Cotsworth made this statement to an Evening Road reporter at noon today.
It is rumored that John Doe warrants were secured and that two suspects will be taken into custody tonight.
It is rumored that John Doe warrants were secured and that two suspects will be taken into custody tonight. Is that rumor true? Asked the reporter.
I can't give you any information on that point.
You won't deny that warrants have been secured?
I can't say one way or the other. When Detective Sullivan and Homeland get back here, I will give something out.
Is it true that Miss Payne is no longer under police surveillance? The district attorney thought for a moment and said,
I do not feel at liberty to answer that question.
Expected an arrest tonight. But you expect an arrest this evening?
We do, but it depends greatly on what Sullivan and Homeland report when they return.
Where have they gone?
Not more than 3 blocks from. I don't care to answer that,
said Mr. Coatsworth, checking himself. He then asked to be excused. It is evident from the remark made by Chief Detective Patrick Cusack that experiments have been made to ascertain whether a noise on the first floor of Burdick's home could be heard on the second floor. Chief Cusack says that it is impossible to hear any noise or disturbance on lower floors beyond the rooms which they were made. Chief Cusack was asked today, how soon will you take someone in custody?
I can't say. My experiences have taught me that arrest may be made at any time.
With the information collected by the detectives, will an arrest be made?
I suppose there will be one.
Sure, it was a woman. Are you still of the opinion that a woman committed the deed?
A woman did it or she played a prominent part in it.
Superintendent of Police Bull admitted that an arrest in a case is prospect, but declined to be specific in his talk. Why such a complete search of a certain home in the Elmwood district was made by the police in connection with the Burdick murder appears to be explained by the fact that a letter was taken from the drawer in a desk, the head of the couch upon which the dead man was found. That this particular letter furnished the motive for the murder was particularly admitted by Chief of Detectives Cusack today. When the detectives reached the house after the tragedy, the open drawer in the desk attached their attention. They were assured by inmates of the house that the drawer was open when the body was found and had not been touched since. In the drawer was found a jumble of letters and papers, and on and ends on the floor directly beneath the drawer were more papers. The detectives concluded that the murderer knew that Burdick kept the letter in his desk that was desired, and that after he was dead, the desk was rifled. Whether or not the law could be enforced, the police will not say, but they are convinced that the murderer got off with the coveted letter. The recovery of such a letter in a house of a suspected person would furnish a link connecting that a person with the crime upon which an arrest could be based, and this explains the thorough search. The woman whose name is on every lip in connection with the mysterious murder of Edwin L. Burdick is Miss Gertrude Payne, wife of Seth T. Payne. The police are guarding her house, and two sleuths in plain clothes are on duty night and day before it. She has not left her residence since the day of the murder. The fact her photograph was found in Mr. Burdick's den, the fact that her house has been searched from cellar to garret by the police, the fact that she talked with Burdick over the telephone on the afternoon preceding the murder, all these combined make her a central figure in one of the most sensational and mysterious murders that has ever come under observation by the police. Whether or not Miss Payne is the suspect whom the police have in mind in question, that has not been yet made clear. But it is certain that a jealous woman, driven to insanity by rage, jealousy, or despair, was the murderer of Edwin L. Burdick. And the woman, a few hours, may reveal her name to the world. She may be dragged from a luxurious home to the terrifying solitude of a prison cell. Society may be shocked and astounded at revelations the police will make of the relations between Edwin L. Burdick and the woman whose frenzied strength enabled her to batter his skull. The den was spattered with blood of the murdered man. The clothing of the woman who killed him must carry blotches of the fluid that will bear witness against her. Urged to the arrest of woman. Chief Detective Patrick V. Cusack is positive that he knows the murderers. He insisted last night that she be arrested at once. He argued the arrest would wring from the woman an admission or a confession that would clear up the doubtful points. Superintendent Bull and District Attorney Coatsworth, while admitting a strongly circumstantial case against a certain woman, they say that the evidence is not enough to make a conviction certain. The picture the police paint of this woman makes her a handsome, of medium size, easily swayed by her passions, a woman of desperate and determined nature. This woman had been intimate with Edwin L. Burdick for years. Burdick lavished attentions on her. Passionate letters passed between them. Recently, Burdick had grown cold. A marked paper among Burdick's effects shows that his attention was drawn to the fact that Miss J.B. Warren of Cleveland had secured a divorce from her husband on February 11. It is believed that Mr. Burdick someday intended to marry Miss Warren. He held incriminating letters. When the news of Miss Warren's divorce reached him, he determined to break off relations with the woman in Buffalo. He coldly informed her of his intentions. She bitterly resented being casted off. In her own way, she loved Burdick. That he could so easily give her up filled her heart with rage and jealousy. He refused to see her again. Perhaps her pleading made him relent on the night on which she was murdered. She knew that he held incriminating letters that would ruin her in the exclusive circle in which she moved if a hint of their contents were disclosed. She perhaps stormed and frightened, failing to move the man before her. She perhaps lulled him into a fancied content by acquaintances with his wishes. She petted and coaxed him. She was tender and submissive, yet in her heart there was burning the fire of jealous rage and a desire to kill. She must save her reputation, even if the death of this man had to be accomplished. Soothing, loving, and tender, she carefully lulled the suspicions of verdict. She stayed on, pleading to be with him one last time. Another case of just see me once more. The man tired and dozed off on his divan. The woman's time had come. She glanced about for a weapon. The bag of golf sticks stood in the corner. Seizing one, she swung it on the sleeping man's head. He stirred and groaned. Frenzy, fear, possessed her. He might recover it and seize her. Blow after blow she showered upon the bleeding skull until at last, fainting from exertion, she ceased. The man lay white and still. She hurried to the desk in the room. Hastily opening the drawer, she searched for her letters. While thus engaged, a noise startled her. She gazed towards the divan. The head of the head man had rolled to one side, and the glazed eyes were staring accusingly. With an exclamation of horror, she jumped up and seizing rugs and sofa pillows, she heaped them about the dead man's head and body to shut out the horrid sight. Then she finished her search. Calmly she went to the front door and out into the night. Not a soul saw her leave the house. This is the picture the police have drawn of the happenings in the Edward Burdick's house on the night he was murdered. But the name of the woman who, in her awful rage and terror, crushed in the head of the man she once wooed with tender caresses, they have not yet disclosed. The police are still trying to get Miss Warden to make a statement that may reveal this woman evidently, and have enlisted the services of Cleveland police in their effort to succeed. Friday, March 1903. The Child Toiler. Regarding the child labor bill, as it applies to the newsboy, the Evening World has held that is the lot of the young street waif. It is preferable because of the outdoor life and the physical freedom attending it, to that of the little toilers of the tenements. In his argument before Senate Judiciary Committee, Commodore Gary said,
"The bill would render the unhappy boy's life even more miserable than it is at the present. He is first to be dosed with education and branded with a license. He is not allowed to earn his own living, but compelled to shut up in some hot tenement's house. In other words, we are to make a class of children engaged in perfectly innocent pursuits subject to the police espionage, the effects of which would be demoralize them. All newsboys are not necessarily neglected or vicious. When trying to earn their living, they should be let alone."
but in contrary strain with the remarks of Dr. Felix Ader, who said,
"Think of your own children under 10 years of age, waiting at 4 o'clock in the morning for the early newspapers. What kind of school is that for children?"
and those of Samuel Gompers, who appealed to the committee to
"Remove the bloat from the state and shame from its business life of compelling babies to fight for their living in the street."
In considering the case of the childish newsboy seeking to support himself on scant earnings of the undeniable hardship and the privation there is in the perplexing question of his own right in the matter, there is no doubt that he would be better off morally if kept from the streets. Whether there would be a corresponding mental and physical improvement is not so certain. The battle of wits in which he engages daily is a hard one, but it is the first skirmish in a great battle of life. But the bill, in its main feature, is one of the most desirable legislative measures introduced at Albany. Child slavery, as it exists, is a deplorable kind of servitude. The very lifeblood of the little workers goes into their toil, aging them prematurely and breaking them down at the time when they should be beginning their life work. The bill will do much to end the perjury to which the parents have resorted to evade the law by making false affidavits concerning a child's age. Boy watched them cut his leg off. Youngster was curious to observe the Bellevue surgeons operate on him. Bellevue Hospital surgeons say that Maver Artipip, the 6-year-old son of Seymour Artipip, a canal boat captain, isn't the pluckiest little chap that they ever lay an operating table in the institution. Maver was born and raised on a canal boat and is a veritable water rat. He was amusing himself today by jumping from the deck of his father's boat, the Lyman Willie, moored at the front of the East 33rd Street, to the decks of the adjacent craft. He made one spring just as a swell displaced the boat he was leaping to, and he fell between the boats. His right leg was so severely crushed that amputation was necessary. His father saw him disappear and, diving down, brought him in his arms to the deck. When taken to Bellevue and placed on the operating table, the surgeons wanted to administer an anesthetic.
"Never mind," said the plucky lad. "It can't hurt worse than it does now. Anyhow, I want to see it cut off."
And he did, without a whimper. Woman insulter got off easy. Might have been sent to jail for a year and fined $500, but escaped by paying $50. His identity is unknown. James G. Saw, an importer of number 128 William Street, whose wife was grossly insulted as she alighted from her carriage in front of her home at number 29 Montgomery Place, Brooklyn, is seeking an explanation of the late fine that was imposed upon John Fitzpatrick, who pleaded guilty of the crime. Miss Shaw ran into the house after being insulted, and her husband chased Fitzpatrick and caused his arrest. His case was called in court of General Sessions on Monday. He pleaded guilty just as Kitty told him his crime was so serious that he might be fined $500 and sentenced to a year in prison. But in view of the extenuating circumstances, he would be fined $50 or 30 days in jail. The fine was paid and the man left without telling his true name or giving his address. Mr. Shaw has written to the district attorney's office to learn what were the extenuating circumstances why such justice is given to a man who confessed his guilt. The Girl Who Is Tired, and the Best Course of Treatment for Lazyitis by George Owen Coach. Lucy always felt tired when she watched her mother and the hired girl do the housework. Therefore, she watched them no more than she could help. Her favorite method of not seeing which fatigued her was to retire to the parlor, recline gracefully on the sofa, and read a novel. Here she generally had peace, although her baby brother, neglected perforce by a mother busy with other duties, sometimes disturbed Lucy by crying in his crib in an adjoining room. This was annoying, and Lucy didn't like annoyance, says George Owen Coach in the Philadelphia Public Ledger. Recently, Lucy has not been feeling quite herself. She was not in any immediate danger of death, merely oppressed with a sense of lassitude and chronic weariness. Thinking of the clever family doctor made the whole thing easy. The doctor was an amiable old chap, and Lucy thought she could bring him to look upon the things she wished. The visit to him was quite satisfactory. He was properly sympathetic when Lucy described symptoms of her malady, and he rose to the adroit suggestion of physical culture as the trout rises to fly. It undoubtedly would be a good thing. She did not need any medicine in the shape of drugs, just some exercise of proper apparatus and correct costume. Certainly he would inform her father of the state of her health and what she ought to have to effect a cure. He would write her father a letter in that evening. The letter was handed over to her father just as he finished his meal, and he opened it at once. It read as follows: I have diagnosed the case as one of lazyitis, a by no means rare ailment. A thorough course of physical culture is the only cure. For this reason, I recommend that your daughter be furnished with appropriate apparatus in costume for indulging in the following exercises: wrestling, bag punching, Swedish cal physics, endurance motions, and flexing actions. He's a dear old man, thought Lucy when she had to pursue the foregoing. He recommends exactly what I want. Then she continued the letter. Wrestling. This exercise can be had while making beds. Turning several heavy mattresses a day will prove very beneficial. Bag punching. This exercise also can be had while making beds. Thumping pillows to get them soft and smooth is excellent for muscles of the arms and shoulders. Swedish calisthenics. These can be indulged with the aid of a broom. The bending and swaying necessary and sweeping will reduce the size of the waist and strengthen the whole torso. Endurance motions. To be practiced over a wash tub filled with hot soapy water and soiled clothes. The up and down motion by which the clothes are cleaned will strengthen the whole body and give great powers of endurance. Also excellent as a vapor bath for complexion. Flexing actions. Scrubbing gives the actions to perfection. The reaching out with a brush while the person exercising is on hands and knees makes for the muscles pliable. Costume. Ordinary house dress without corsets, skirts, clearing the floor, and sleeves tucked up at the elbows. Time. All the time except when naturally fatigued. I hope to hear of decided improvement in your daughter's health shortly. I am, my dear sir, yours very respectfully, a wise man, medical doctor. Whereat Lucy wept and said spiteful things about the nasty, mean old physician. Did the prescription do her any good? Well, her mother has been to 2 matinees in 3 weeks, and the girl has bought a book entitled Housekeeping as a Science. Smith after mosquitoes. Ask a legislator of New Jersey for $10,000 in which he can fight them. Special to the Evening World. Trenton, New Jersey, March. Professor J.B. Smith of New Brunswick appeared today before the Legislative Committee on Appropriations and asked for $10,000 to be used in exterminating mosquitoes. He presented the committee with a bottle of live mosquitoes, which he had captured under the ice. No money came, so he tried suicide. Martin Boos, a German gardener, was found dying this afternoon in his room in the Hotel Stern, number 1015 3rd Avenue, with a gas tube tied to his mouth. Ill health and despondency over the non-arrival of money from the old country are causes assigned by the people in the house for the man's act. Boos went to the hotel February 16th. He said they had been in America for a great many years and had worked at gardening for rich families on Riverside Drive. His health had compelled him to give up the work, and for about a year he had done any light thing that offered itself. He wrote home for money about 3 weeks ago, and for 7 or 8 days past had gone to the post office expecting to receive an answer. Last evening he returned again without the long-looked-for letter. It was noticed that his overcoat was missing. He had no money, and it is presumed now that he pawned the garment and with the proceeds brought the gas tube to which to commit suicide. Boos is about 30 years of age. Shot his friend, killed himself. Victim of attack, got bullet in his back, and is dangerously ill at a Staten Island home. Wasn't Salient insane? Both men worked in Butterick's, and Suicide's wife said he left home saying he was going to kill someone. Otto Semig, a printer, is lying dangerously ill at his home on Castleton Avenue, Staten Island today, suffering from a bullet wound in his back. The man who shot Semig is dead. He killed himself immediately after firing the bullet into Semig's back. His name was Herman Paul. He was also a printer. He lived at number 1434 Myrtle Avenue, Brooklyn. Both men worked in Butterick Publishing Company's place in Throop Avenue, Brooklyn. There is no explanation of the shooting except that perhaps Paul was insane, and there is no explanation of the fact why he should have singled out Semig out for a victim. The men were friendly so far as can be learned. Sedgwick is 35 years old. He was returning home last night and when, in a lonesome part of the road, he heard someone approaching rapidly from behind. A moment later, a flash of light illuminated the road. There was a loud report, and Sedgwick felt a stinging pain in his back. He staggered to his home, and just as he entered the door, 3 more shots rang out and Sedgwick's assailant dropped dead. Later, the body of Paul was found, where it had fallen. There were 3 bullet wounds in his head. A 7-chambered revolver lay by his side. In Paul's pocket was found a photograph of himself, which bore his name and address. Investigation showed that Paul had left his home on February 22nd, and his wife had not seen him since. Miss Paul said her husband told her when he went away that he was going to kill somebody. She said her husband had the delusion that someone was hounding him. Verdict murders baffles police more than ever. Detectives and prosecutor are at odds, and Superintendent Bull telephones Evening World that he never knew a crime to be so well covered up. Dr. Payne visits his wife, whom the police are closely watching in Buffalo. Officials say the slayer drew $100 a month from the victim. At 5 o'clock this afternoon, the Evening World called up Jen Bull, Superintendent of Police of Buffalo, for information concerning the Burdick murder mystery. From his conversation, it is evident that the authorities of Buffalo are no closer to the solution of the mystery than they were yesterday. A report of the telephone talk follows. The Evening World. Is an arrest to be made today in the Burdick case? Jen Bull.
I believe not. From the reports made to me, the matter stands just where it did yesterday. As I already told the Evening World, I've never run across a murder that was so well covered up.
Will Miss Payne be subjected to any further examination?
That matter rests with Chief of Detectives, Cusack, and the District Attorney. There may be developments at any minute, but the possibility is remote.
Is it true that 3 out of 5 of the suspects have been eliminated from further inquiry?
So far as I know, the number of suspects has not been confined to 5. As I said before, it is a very puzzling case, and we have been doing the work upon it that the public knows nothing about.
Have the police of Buffalo investigated the alibi established by Miss Payne?
All I can say is that we investigated every phase of the case.
Burdick's murderer drew $100 a month from him. Special to the Evening World. From Staff Correspondent. Buffalo, March 6. While Chief of Police Bull and District Attorney Cotsworth expressed their positive belief that they know the slayer of Edwin L. Burdick, surprise is manifested that neither one will cause an arrest to be made. It is doubtful if they agree on one person, because the District Attorney has inclined to the idea that a woman aided by a man was the slayer, while Chief Bull has all along held that it was a woman alone who did the killing. The motives for the crime have not appealed to the 2 officers in the same way either. Mr. Coatsworth is not convinced that a high social scandal is mixed up in the tragedy. He is inclined to think that the murder was done for some cause of coarser nature. Chief Bull declares it was done to prevent revelations that would involve many high-toned families. Whether the beliefs of the officials may be, it is certain that they are up against a stone wall. For 8 days they have shadowed Miss Seth Payne, the woman suspect. They have given her the 3rd degree, have searched her house and laid all sorts of traps for her, but have failed to secure compromising evidence of any character. The person suspected by the chief of police is evidently a woman who was dependent on him. The chief says she enjoyed a revenue from him of $100 a month. Dr. Payne visits his wife. Dr. Seth D. Payne returned from Buffalo from Batavia today and immediately visited his Elmwood Avenue home. He stayed there a few minutes in conversation with Miss Payne and then called on some friends downtown. I referred Dr. Payne to my lawyer, Mr. Fennelly, said Miss Payne after his departure. We have been requested not to say anything for publication. From being one of the busiest offices in the city of the headquarters of District Attorney at the City Hall became more quiet today than on even the average business day. When the District Attorney emerged from his private office at noon, he said there was nothing new in the case. For a week now, detectives have been constant visitors to the office. At times, There were fully a dozen of them in the office together. Today, except for the coming and going of Chief Detective Cusack, none of the city's sleuths appeared, except one or two who are interested in other matters. Mr. Coatsworth said that he has not yet seen the report on the autopsy, nor the complete report of City Chemist Hill. Will those reports be made public after you have seen them? Was asked.
I would like to see them before I answer that question, replied Mr. Coatsworth.
Declares she is innocent. Miss Payne vehemently declares she is innocent. She says she did not go out of her house on the night that Edwin L. Burdick was killed, and in this she is corroborated to an extent by a man who is lodged in her house. The man, his name was A. Charleston, says that he knows positively that Miss Payne was in her room until 11:30 p.m. on the night that Burdick was killed. His statement in this:
I got in the house just before 10:30 o'clock and went straight to my room. I heard Miss Payne cough when I came in. I read for an hour till 11:30 o'clock at least, and possibly a bit later, and recalled distinctly hearing her cough after I turned out the light. She had been afflicted with a severe cold for several days and coughed increasingly every night. I don't know how long I was awake, but certainly only a few minutes. I remember on Saturday following the murder that I heard her cough. The police had been at the house questioning Miss Payne. She spoke to Miss Cunningham and me and asked us if we didn't remember that she coughed and knew that she was in the house. I did. I told the police so too. My room is directly across the narrow hallway from Miss Payne's room, and I could very easily hear what was going on in there. The police took my statement that day.
Think job is not an inside one. The police have run down clue after clue, but those pointing at the woman suspect may have been the only ones that have followed with any degree of persistence. The police have also thoroughly examined the scene of the murder and have discovered one clue that eliminates the suspicion that a job may have been an inside one. The electric light in Mr. Burdick's den and in the hall can be turned on and off by a single button. They can be turned on or off separately. The murderer or murderess of Mr. Burdick turned out these lights separately when he or she left the house. The police went to the bedrooms in the house and listened while blows were struck in the den. The noise could be distinctly, though faintly heard. They were not such as would disturb a sound sleeper. Miss Payne has engaged lawyer Philip V. Fennelly to protect her. Mr. Fennelly says that the police have intimated to him that Miss Payne is not the woman they suspect. He says she is innocent of the murderer. Superintendent Bull has more to say today. He was asked whether Miss Payne was the person he suspects.
I decline to answer that question.
He replied,
I will not answer it.
Thinks there is no struggle. Is the woman you suspect one who had relations with Burdick or was familiar with his domestic habits?
The person I suspect, I believe, to have been on friendly terms with Mr. Burdick, and I have reason to believe that Mr. Burdick had assisted financially to the extent of $100 a month,
said Superintendent Bull. Was there a struggle when the crime was committed between the murderer and Burdick?
I should think there was no struggle. There was no third person in the smoking room.
Is the person you suspect from inside or outside the home?
That question I have not answered and will not answer until there is an arrest.
Superintendent Bull asked whether he had clues to the identity of the lone woman who avoided a policeman in Ashland Avenue early on Friday morning. He said that he had, but would not make them public. Had the person you suspect ever telephoned or written to Mr. Burdick?
Yes. The person had communicated with him both by telephone and letter,
said the superintendent.
It is fair to presume,
he concluded,
that the person who committed the crime opened the front door.
District Attorney Coatsworth said last night,
the statements alleged to have been made by me to the effect that Miss Payne is not regarded as a suspect is false. I never made such a statement.
Miss Payne's own story of her movements. The following statement was made by Miss Payne today. I know absolutely nothing of the murder of Mr. Burdick. I have no idea who committed it. I have no theory as to who did it or how it was done. I simply know nothing about it. My maiden name is Gertrude Bernard. I am 29 years old.
I was born in Alban, Orleans County. My father was an Episcopal minister. I moved to North Tonawanda. At the time, Dr. Payne was not a dentist, but was working in Tawawanda. We were married. Since then, he became a dentist and now practices in Batav- Batavia. Coming home usually at least once a week. We have one child, a girl 7 years old. She is living and is with me now. The last time I talked to Mr. Burdick was last Tuesday. It was over the phone. I did not see him personally. On Wednesday night, he called me up on the phone and asked me about a matter that was purely social and did not relate in any way to an appointment. I told him I would let him know the next day, and on Thursday, I did call him up on the phone in reference to the matter on which he telephoned me on Wednesday. This was shortly before noon, I think. I called him up at his office, and he came to the telephone. We had a brief conversation, and that was the last time I spoke to him or talked to him. I did not see him thereafter.
Did not go out after dinner.
On Thursday evening, I had dinner at my usual time. On Thursday evening, I had dinner, as usual, at my home, number 429 Elmwood Avenue. My dinner hour is between 6 and 7 o'clock, and I had dinner as usual on Thursday evening. I did not go out of my house after dinner. Some people live in my home with us. Some people live in my house with us. One of them is Miss Mary Cunningham. She is not my maid. She is employed downtown. She knows that I did not go out after dinner. She had a caller on Thursday evening, and they sat chatting in her room. After dinner, I went to the parlor and read the paper. After reading it, I took some water up to her room, knocking on the door, and at that time she and her caller were sitting chatting. After leaving them, I went to my own room. Before retiring, I sat for 10 minutes or perhaps longer with my little girl while she played and marked figures and scrawled on the blackboard that I bought her to play with. Then she went to bed, and soon thereafter I retired.
Did not go to Burdick's house.
I slept as usual for the night. I awoke as usual on Friday morning. I certainly did not leave my house Thursday night. I positively was not out of my house between dinner on Thursday night until after breakfast on Friday morning. I did not go to the Burdick's house, or to any other person's house, or to any place on Thursday night, for I was not outside my own house. I passed no one on the street that night. No one saw me, and I saw no one on Thursday night except for those in my own house, and the caller on the young woman. Both my husband and I knew the Burdicks. Yes, we also know the Pennells and the Warrens. Miss Warren formerly lived in Buffalo, and we were well acquainted. I know nothing of the divorce actions of Mr. Burdick and Mrs. Burdick. My name has not appeared as a co-respondent in any action brought by divorce by Miss Burdick against Mr. Burdick. There is no reason whatever why I should. My husband and I have visited or called the Burdicks, and they have called on us. I do not recall ever calling on Mr. Burdick or Miss Burdick without my husband, and I am positive I never called alone on Mr. Burdick at his home. For the last 2 years, I do not think Dr. Payne and I have been to the Burdicks to call regularly. I know nothing of the killing of Mr. Burdick. I have no idea who did it. I have no theory of why anyone should do it. I know nothing at all, whatsoever.
Saturday, March 1903. Little May Foster, the 14-year-old daughter of Charles A. Foster of number 24 Perry Street, is the envy of all the girls in the Greenwich Village. She has had a birthday party at which her friends danced to the music of the 8th Regiment Band. Little Miss Foster has been one of the most popular romps in the neighborhood, but now she has decided that she must be a young lady and give up her dolls. When she announced her decision in that direction, her father, who is a wealthy upholsterer, told her that he would give her a party to which she could invite all her friends of her pinafore days. They came to the party in full force. There were 75 of them, and they had the time of their lives. There never was such a party in Greenwich Village. and it will be remembered until the last landmark of that once picturesque little collection of homes is wiped out. Child Bride tells why she fled. 15-year-old Elmira Bradwell explains how she became maid, wife, and grass widow in a single day. Her liege lord, 81. I hear you're looking for a wife, she said. Johnny Powell quickly made her his fourth, but it was not for long. Kinderhook, the historic village in Columbia County, New York, which from its ancient fame as home of Martin Van Buren sprang recently into fresher prominence as the scene of the Van Warmer murder, has a new sensation. For 2 days, the tongues of the village gossip have rolled relishingly over the courtship, wedding, and parting in 24 hours of Johnny Powell, a sprightly swain of over 80, and pretty 15-year-old Elmira Bradwell. As far back as the memory of the old inhabitant reaches, and the elasticity of the facility in the county towns is proverbial, Johnny Powell has had a monopoly of butcher's business in Kinderhook. Beginning as a peddler, he gradually established a large trade, and the various families included in his daily route grew to expect his visits eagerly, knowing that he possessed and was always willing to distribute a budget of gossip and anecdotes far more complete than any to be found in the local semi-weekly newspaper. Among the families is that of Edward Van Buren, a collateral relative of President Van Buren, where Allie Bradwell, as she is generally known, is employed as a nurse girl. There, last night, the Evening World reporter found her and heard from her childish lips on why she was maid, wife, and grass widow in less than 24 hours. Apparently, Miss Powell, a tall and very pretty blonde who looks slightly older than her 15 years, does not bear her acquainted husband any grudge. There are times, indeed, when she views her brief and very singular romance through the mist of tears, but oftener, especially when she is imitating the rich Irish brogue and ramshackle gait of her ancient lord, she laughs heartily at the recollection. She tells all about it. Tell you all about it? Sure I will, she says. You see, Johnny Powell had been delivering meat here for a long time, but until one day last week he only saw my sister May, who works in the kitchen. He has been trying to get married for over 18 months, ever since his third wife died. He sold out his business to his son-in-law, Mr. Steinbach, for $300. Do you know he spent nearly every cent of it trying to get married again? He paid $50 the first month to get a divorce for a woman over in Valadia, who said she would marry him if it was all over. She didn't. Then he took another woman up to the Albany and bought her $45 worth of clothes, and after she got them, she would not have him. After that, he began courting a girl who worked in the house next door. She let her go to see her for 3 months, and he brought her a boa and a black skirt and a pair of white kid gloves. Then she told him he couldn't come any more, for she had a husband in New York, and he might object. That was just before he saw me. May was out last Wednesday when he came with the meat, and I opened the door. He looked so little and old and smiled in a funny way that just for the joke I said, I hear you're looking for a wife, Johnny Powell. Would I suit you? And Johnny said, Oh, no, gal, you're too young. And would you? He said. But when he was going away, he said, And would you marry me, gal? And I said, Sure, for I thought he was only joking. That afternoon when I went down to my mother's house, who should I see but Johnny Powell sitting in the kitchen. When I went in, Johnny said, Your mother says it's all right, Allie. I got to write out a piece for me to take to the minister. Don't take off your hat, for we're going to be married now. This is not Irish, I'm sorry. Then he began to waltz around the room and wanted me to play tag. He said he felt like a boy of 17. I was scared. Why, Johnny, I can't marry an old man like you. I was only fooling, I said. My mother got up and told me to come and see the new black skirt, the black brilliantine waist Johnny had bought me, and she said he gave her $4 for me to buy shoes with, but I said I wouldn't marry him. Then my mother said I had promised and I must do it, for she and the boys could get all the meat they wanted and when I was Johnny's wife.
And she said she would have me put in the reformatory at Hudson if I didn't. So between them both, I put on the clothes. They are the ones I have on now. Don't you think they're so nice? And the skirt is so long, too. Then we went over to the minister's and Mr. Smith married us. Johnny took me over to his house. My, but his son-in-law was mad when he heard he was married. Why, I went into the butcher shop and threw all the meat into the middle of the road. Johnny didn't care, though. When we got home, we sat around and ate oranges and nuts until my little brothers came to see us. Johnny gave them $4 to treat, and they went away.
The book ended the romance.
I had been reading a very nice book called Her Second Love that day, and I told Johnny I wanted to finish it. He said, "All right," and began to read aloud. He got tired after a while, and went to sleep sitting up in the chair. It was about 5:30 before I got through, when I began to think I was tired of being married. So after I'd gotten breakfast, Johnny gave me $5 and told me I could go out and spend it. I did go right and take the electric car to Vitalia. I stayed over there till 3:30. When I got back, Johnny was waiting for me back at the station.
"Come back, gal, come back," he shouted, and he began to chase me.
Just then some girls going home from school came along and I mixed up with them. Johnny can't see very well and he grabbed one of the other girls by mistake. She gave him a big slap. Then I jumped onto the car and went back to Vitalia. I heard he watched for me until 9 that night, but I came back another way and got to Miss Van Buren's house without seeing him. He has gone to Brooklyn now to see his daughter. You know, he puts up all kind of mixture that says he will cure all kinds of diseases, and I heard he is going to be a doctor down there. Will I go back to him? I guess not, and I don't think he'll chase me around anymore either. I wish I had a book about Her Second Love with me. I lent it to you and you could read it on the train and send it back.
Life hangs on, missing girl. Foster sister Mammy Lugan, who disappeared mysteriously in a critical condition from grieving over her. Vain search for her. A police dragnet was thrown over the city today for Mammy Lugan, the pretty assistant cashier who disappeared on February 28th from the dry goods store in 14th Street. Unless the girl is found, it is feared that her invalid adopted sister, Mammy O'Neill, of number 159 Greenwood Street, will lose her reason, if not her life. The O'Neill girl is under the care of two physicians. When 4 years old, the missing girl was adopted by Mammy's mother, and they were reared together. The weaker girl leaned upon the other for affection. Miss P.J. O'Neill, the latter's mother, says that her child counted the hours each day until the little cashier returned from the store. The Lugan girl had a sweetheart, Ralph Fanning, foreman in sewing machine factory, to whom she wrote the night before she went away. She asked him to meet at 6th Avenue and 13th Street on Friday of her going. He did not receive the letter until Monday, and it is feared that the girl, disappointed at not seeing him at the place she named, ended her life. Mammy left dry goods store at 4:30 p.m. and has not been seen or heard from since. She had no relatives, and save for Fanning and the O'Neill, had no friends. Fanning has searched for the missing girl night and day without getting a single clue for the police to work on. 6 other girls are being searched for by the police of the greater city. Abby Morris and Lucy Jelly, 15 and 16 years old respectively, living with their parents at Rockaway and K Avenues, Canaries, have not been seen since Thursday. They left their homes for the city to have a good time. Abby had $27 she saved from her wages when she worked in the Canaries factory, where both girls had been employed. Bertha Violet Haviland of Mama Ronak came to the city last Monday to answer 2 advertisements for a stenographer. She is 22 years old, tall, and dark skinned. Hung about her neck from a fine gold chain was a cross inscribed with her name and that of St. Thomas's Church. She wears spectacles. She has not been seen since. Miss Mary Irving of number 107 Washington Street, Flushing, left her home on February 16th, saying that she intended to visit friends in Manhattan. Her prolonged absence has greatly alarmed her relatives. Fanny Lowinger, a beautiful Hungarian girl, disappeared on Washington's birthday from her boarding place, number 22 Avenue C. She was said to have been promised employment by Samuel Welch of number 91 Columbia Street. The girl has not been found. Miss Katie Caulfield, rosy-cheeked and lively, arrived from Ireland 2 months ago and went to live with relatives in Hoboken. She was staying at number 23 Monroe Street. On February 28th, she complained of homesickness and was suggested that she visit Manhattan and get cured of the blues. She started over the ferry, and that was the last seen of her. Woman suspect in Burdick case is soon set free. Miss Marian Hutchinson, who was employed in the factory of murdered man as an extra clerk, was taken into custody today and later released on writ of habeas corpus. Her sister came to her with an attorney. Another coachman's story is said to have put the police on her trail. Miss Payne's counsel appeared for her. Young woman was well known in social circles in London, Ontario. Special to the Evening World from a staff correspondent. Buffalo, March 7th. The police arrested a woman suspected of the Burdick murder today and were then compelled to release her from custody. She was Marian Hutchinson, up to a month ago, an extra clerk in Burdick's office. Detectives arrested her in a boarding house at number 19 West Tupper Street and took her to police headquarters. While the police and district attorney were giving her the third degree, her sister Florence, through lawyer Fennelly, who also represents Miss Gertrude Payne, secured a writ of habeas corpus from Supreme Court Justice White on the ground that evidence was not sufficient to warrant arrest, and she was released on the writ. The greatest secrecy was maintained in connection with the apprehension of Miss Hutchinson. An attempt was made to smuggle her into police headquarters, and when this failed, guards were put at the doors, and no one connected with the department was allowed to enter except for Superintendent Bull and District Attorney Coatsworth had completed the examination of the suspect. Tried to keep from public gaze. Dressed entirely in black, the woman was a striking figure as she appeared at headquarters. She walked unsteadily, as if about to collapse. A thick black veil entirely hid her features, and in addition she held a handkerchief over her face. Marian Hutchinson came to Buffalo from London, Ontario, about 6 months ago. Her physical attraction made her a marked woman in the livelier sections of the city. She came under the observation of Burdick, whose attentions to women, it appears, were by no means confined to the Elmswood section, where his home was located. Burdick was lavish in his expenditures for women who pleased his fancy. He spent money on Marian Hutchinson and finally placed her in his envelope factory, where she worked as an extra clerk. Whenever Burdick left the city on one of his periodical business trips, Marian Hutchinson absented herself from the office. She was often seen with Burdick, riding in his automobile and dining with him in the downtown restaurants. This was especially true after Burdick's wife left him and went to Atlantic City. About a month ago, the girl left Burdick's employment. At that time, she was living in a fashionable apartment house. She did not remain long after leaving Burdick's office, and on February 17th, she rented a room from Miss Coughlin. Did Burdick grow tired of her? The belief of the police is that Burdick tried to have her get out of Buffalo. At any rate, he did not see her as frequently as he had been accustomed. They were seen together in a downtown cafe a week ago, last Tuesday evening, 2 days before Burdick was killed. It appears that in all the investigations of police, this woman was overlooked in the beginning. Instead of looking for a possible murderer within the factory, the suspects were picked out of the set in which Burdick's family moved around. It was in this manner of suspicion was directed, first an innuendo, towards Miss Gertrude Payne. Her house was ransacked from top to bottom. She was subjected to a searching cross-examination, and a police guard was placed in the street opposite to her house. Her every move was watched, and while nothing could be said against her beyond that she had telephoned to Burdick on the afternoon of the day of the murder, the espionage was continued until last night. Suddenly, the police guard was removed, and it is announced that no further suspicion attached to Miss Payne. The police department of the city was put on search for Marian Hutchinson. Clue to prisoner came from cabman. The clue for the cabman known as Joey, he told Chief of Detectives Cusack that a week ago, last Thursday night, he picked up 3 fares in the business section of the city. 2 were women, one of whom was elderly. This woman, with a man, left the cab after a short ride. The young woman who remained ordered him to drive to the corner of Ashland Avenue and Summer Street. She got out of the cab carrying a satchel. As she reached the sidewalk, she dropped a handkerchief. The cabman stopped to pick it up, but she grabbed it before he could reach it and hurried down Ashland Avenue. He gave a description of the young woman and it corresponded with that of Marion Hutchinson. The trail leading to the relations between Burdick and the young woman was plain, and from what was learned within a few hours, a theory was built up around Marion Hutchinson. How he foiled detectives. Because private detectives had been watching him for evidence in his wife's cross suit for divorce, he could not afford to be seen going anywhere with a woman, living practically alone at his house with the den on the ground floor. It would have been an easy matter for him to have supplied any woman he wished to entertain with a key to the front door. If he had made an engagement with a woman for Thursday night, he fixed the hour after that usually chosen by private detectives who were watching his house to leave. They generally went away when he turned out the light in his bedroom around 10:30 o'clock. Had the girl gone to the house with the intention of killing Burdick, she would not have taken a cab. This would have left the trail too easily followed. The police believe that she went there to enforce certain demands, that Burdick refused to grant them, and that, in the struggle which ensued, she killed him. Two descriptions that tally. It has been established by doctors that Burdick died around 1 o'clock in the morning. About 1:10 o'clock in the morning, policeman Myers saw a woman walking from the direction of Burdick's house. As she neared him, she stepped out in the middle of the street and walked there until it was out of sight. The description of the woman seen by policeman Myers tallies with the cabman's description of the woman he drove to the corner near Burdick's house. Both descriptions agreed with the description of Marion Hutchinson. When the detectives located her, they found her left hand had been injured in some way. It is wrapped in bandages and appears to give her considerable pain. At headquarters, the girl was taken to Superintendent Bull's office, where she was put through a rigid cross-examination. An important piece of evidence, it was disclosed, is the handkerchief, which was found yesterday in Ashland Avenue, stained with blood. At about the point where policeman Myers say the woman left the sidewalk and went to the middle of the street. This was a woman's handkerchief of ordinary size. It was taken to the office of Superintendent Bull and locked in a drawer in his desk. After Miss Hutchinson had been questioned at length today, she was asked to turn over the handkerchief she carried on her hand. Up to this time, she had kept composure fairly well, but request caused her to be pale. With evident reluctance, she passed the handkerchief to Inspector Bull. Turning to the desk, he took out the handkerchief that was found in the ice of Ashland Avenue yesterday. He compared the two carefully, the girl watching him with breathless interest. Then he looked at both handkerchiefs in his desk and ordered that Miss Hutchinson be taken to the office of the district attorney. After the first examination of Miss Hutchinson, the police would say no more than that she was under arrest on suspicion of having murdered Burdick. At the time of arresting her, they warned Miss Cogan and the others in the Tupper Street house to say nothing, so that it was impossible to learn from them whether Miss Hutchinson was in the house on the night of the murder. Miss Hutchinson is a woman of education and refinement, and a fine musician. She is the daughter of a physician of London, Ontario, who separated from his wife because of family differences. It is understood that the mother, Miss Hutchinson, is living in this city. Burdick's servant fights for his name. The servant in Burdick's house, Margaret Murray, makes some very interesting statements. The police have apparently paid little attention to her. She is a fine-looking girl, tall, muscular, and well-proportioned. She displayed temper in her statements, and her story was reluctantly given. She was the last person, except the murderer, to see Edwin L. Burdick alive. She had been out the night of the murder visiting friends in East Buffalo. When she returned home, she says, she saw Mr. Burdick going downstairs to fix the furnaces. He was clad only in his underclothing. I went to bed, and when the body was found, I ran out of the house and called the doctor. A strange action, considering there was a telephone at hand in the house. The girl asked why she ran out to a telephone when there was one in the house. She sulkily refused to answer. It was suggested to her that she did this because Mr. Hull did not want the children to know what happened, to view this as a case of assented.
I don't know anything about Mr. Burdick's affairs,
She said, when asked to throw some light on the subject.
I never knew he and Miss Burdick had any quarrels, and I didn't know anything about a divorce. I know Miss Burdick was away, and I always thought she was just away on a visit and was coming back when she got through visiting.
Did Mr. Burdick ever entertain women in his den? She was asked.
That's a lie, she replied pompily and angrily. He never did. He wasn't that kind of man.
Queer defense of her employer. Her prompt and emphatic defense of Mr. Burdick was a bit strange in view of the fact that she had just professed the most complete ignorance of family affairs. She denied that she knew Miss Payne, or that she had ever seen Miss Payne. She refused to say anything about the lunch found in the Burdick's den, and declined also to talk of the golf club found in the kitchen. Regarding the movements of the Burdick family on the night of the murder, she professed to have no knowledge. It may be that this girl knows more of the circumstances surrounding the mystery than she cares to disclose. The police have given out no information regarding their examination of the servant. Either they paid little attention to her, or else the information she has imparted is of such importance that they have concealed it. Chemical analysis of the contents of Mr. Burdick's stomach shows that he was not drugged or poisoned before his death. A chemical analysis also on the stains of the golf putter found by the police discloses that the fact that they were not blood. The police therefore have discarded the theory that the murder was committed with a golf stick, and today they are searching the sewers in the neighborhood of the Burdick house in hope that the weapon might be found there. The finding of the woman would go a long way toward furnishing a clue to the identity of the murderer. Miss Payne will issue a statement sometime today. Her lawyer is preparing it. She will explain fully and frankly all she knows of the murder.
Do you know that I feel cause for joy today?
Said Miss Payne.
You know, of course, that the detectives have been withdrawn in front of my house, and that I am no longer under surveillance from police. I feel so happy and free. The condition for the last few days has been unbearable, almost as bad as really being locked up. This statement will be issued by my lawyer, and I expect it to put me right with the public and clear up as many points that have been misunderstood and misrepresented. I shall see my attorney in the morning, and when all the details of the statement will be arranged, and it will be prepared and submitted to me.
Miss Payne talked on the men. It was recalled today that Miss Payne, at 1901 banquet of the Alumni Association of St. Margaret's, the fashionable boarding school she attended in the city, responded to the toast of the men.
How blessed has my time been, and what joys have I known,
said Miss Payne in the beginning of her response to the men.
I have been married 7 years, and I can say positively that a man is like a stock investment. Careful study is required to get the right kind of husband, just as a clothes wash is necessary to purchase safe and reliable stocks.
Miss Payne made a detailed report in a merry way of how she conducted her married life. By this address she gained a reputation among the girls of St. Margaret's as a humorist. To the unmarried members of the Alumni Association, Miss Payne gave these bits of advice.
When married, stay in your sweet cage and be content to sing. Light household duties make glad a young wife's heart. Love is a tender passion. Do not be too tender. When married, be a fond, meek, trusting wife.
Miss Lillian Willett, sister of Edwin O. Burdick, living at Casanova, New York, makes public 2 interesting letters she received from her brother. In them he mentioned his troubles with his wife and also writes of Pennell. These are his 2 letters. Wrote his mother of troubles. Buffalo, February 6, 1903.
My dear mother, my family troubles are taking considerable of my time, though the sharp edge is wearing off somewhat. The day after I left my trip, Pennell came back here and told my lawyer that they had concluded to contest my suit. He withdrew Allie's waiver and put in the amended answer to my complaint, making countercharges against me and asking for the custody of the children and alimony. There is no question about the outcome. I shall get my divorce, but I am going to let the matter go slow for a time. I am in no hurry now, and it may be from 2 to 6 months before it comes to trial. I think he is trying to desert her, to find an excuse to quarrel, and I am going to give him time to do it. I am worrying about the matter very much. The position is much worse than mine, and I'm going to let them sizzle for a while. Everyone hears that I have sued her for divorce, and I have the sympathy of everyone I have seen. I told Marion about it on Sunday. It was a hard task, the hardest I'd ever had. She more than met my expectations. She's going to stand up like the little woman she is. I am more than proud of her. She will help with the children, and we are going to be great cronies. She told me that more than a year ago, near 2 years, she thinks, she knew her mother met Pennell, and asked her if it was not wrong. Marion asked her not to do it, and asked her if Papa knew. Her mother did not reply. Of course, I don't go anywhere, just staying with the kids, but I like it. With love to you all, your boy.
Would fight for his children. February 19th, Mr. Burdick wrote the following letter to his sister.
Dear Lily, the children are very well. Lily is still at Atlantic City, or was on Sunday. He is back here with his wife. They are going to contest the suit. I think he is compelling her to do it, and has planned to get rid of her in some way through this action. He will not be tried before the middle or last of March, possibly much later. I am in no hurry now. She is the one who is getting worst of it by the delay. If I have to fight the rest of my life to keep the children, I'll do it. Your brother.
Hey, Razzie here. How's it going? We just ended a whole week. And there was a lot of things that we went over. I know from my own searches, the Burdick case was never solved, which, is kind of amazing. I wonder if modern forensics could solve it. Mammy Lucan? Nothing from her. I looked it up and couldn't find anything. Anyways, I'll be coming back to do another episode of Week in Newspapers next April. We'll be going to 1912, and a crazy event happened in April. See you then. Bye-bye. Hey, Razzie here. How's it going? We just ended a whole week. And, there was a lot of things that we went over. I know from my own searches, the Burdick case was never solved, which, is kind of amazing. I wonder if modern forensics could solve it. Mammy Lucan? Nothing from her. I looked it up and I couldn't find anything. Anyways, I'll be coming back to do another episode of Week in Newspapers next April. We'll be going to 1912, and a crazy event happened in April. See you then. Bye-bye.